Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. Marvel Magic Case Files. Chapter 21 Salomon's Difficult Study Life. The Supreme Master was very helpless to Salomon's disappointing performance. When faced with Athena's request, the Supreme Master could only reluctantly agree. His Holiness also felt that young people should learn more while they are young, no matter what aspect it is, as long as Salomon's magic lessons are not behind. Master Guyi also has to admit that in the Kamataj headquarters in the Himalayas, almost no one has much refined artistic taste, at least compared to Athena. Everyone else pales in comparison, even if they live more than 1000. The same is true of the Venerable Nian. Except for the collections from all over the world accumulated over the years, there is almost nothing in the headquarters that can show the long history and cultural connotation of Kamataj. Even if the bowls Salomon eats are teapots from the Tang dynasty, it cannot change the fact that Kamataj has extremely poor aesthetics from top to bottom. Kamataj pays attention to cleanliness, and her clothes are plain dark linen and cotton, and even the meals in the cafeteria are clear water cabbage. Really, His Holiness doesn't know why so many people go to the Hong Kong temple to join in the fun when it's meal time? And the gift from Athena was also very sincere. Either one of Pegasus and Aegis can be used for a lifetime. Now all those things are given to Salomon, which shows that Athena is very concerned about Salomon, which also makes Master Guyi a little relieved. At least she is not worried that Athena will teach Salomon astray. But for Salomon, learning how to fight with shield and spear was not at all interesting to him. In his opinion, the biggest function of Aegis is to defend against the attacks that the Seraphim shield and the Ring of Ragator cannot resist, and he does not need to throw the shield like Captain America. The Ring of Ragator has become an offensive and defensive magic, and using a shield is superfluous. And Salomon has great concerns about the safety of Pegasus. If he were to sit on Pegasus's back, he would always prepare a feather fall technique to prevent accidents. Athena's appearance is naturally extremely beautiful, but it is a bit difficult for Salomon. It's not that he has any special thoughts about Athena, it's just that these ancient Greek goddesses don't seem to pay much attention to privacy, and there is almost no difference between men and women. And because of his physical development, Salomon often had to use the spell mechanized mind on himself in order to calm down and listen to the lectures. Every month, he takes time to go to New York's Mount Athena to study sculpture and art appreciation, to juggle the children in the orphanage opened by Athena, and to study mathematics, biology, chemistry, and physics and other secular students there. A must-learn course. His Holiness was also very satisfied that Salomon could find a teacher who taught science. In addition to the small language linguistics, alchemy, and potion science arranged by the Supreme Mage, he had to get up early every morning to practice body protection and practice the endless white magic in the Book of Vision Emperor. It hasn't been that busy either. He also believed that he might have more knowledge than the 7th graders preparing for Newt at Hogwarts if there was Hogwarts in this world. With such a large class. If he hadn't used the spell of Scholar's Touch to finish reading a book in an instant, he might be too busy to have time to eat. Now Salomon has experienced the hard work of those archmages studying when they were apprentices. Now Salomon has 2 sets of spellcasting systems, one is naturally the spellcasting system of Weiss Sandy, and the other is the Toril crystal wall spellcasting system driven by the magic power of Weiss Sandy, and the 2 sets of spellcasting systems complementing each other. Salomon made rapid progress in the stage of low-level mages. Sometimes when he saw the 3 rings on his right hand, he would feel a little unbelievable. It stands to reason that Emperor Weishan would not easily forgive such a magic-stealing caster as him, but the Trinity Weiss Handy let him go. Salomon can only guess that this is because of the release of the stigmata, and the stigmata has some inexplicable relationship with the Kabbalah tree of life he saw in his dream, and the secret can only be revealed by himself excavated. For this reason, he dug up the modern Golden Dawn's research on the Kabbalah tree of life in the library, trying to find some evidence, which made Salomon's burden a little heavier. If it weren't for his young age, he would be very worried about his hairline. Fortunately, the Venerable also understands the necessity of combining work and rest, and will give Salomon a day off every week. As long as it is that day, Salomon not only does not need to face the dark dimension, but also does not need to practice alchemy and potions. He can lie in bed and sleep all day without anyone coming to disturb him. Salomon's efforts were naturally seen by other people in Kamataj, so when Salomon took out the dimensional bag he made, no one was surprised. Although this magic has its different, but it's not black magic. It's just that no one learns this kind of magic that can't enhance combat power. If you want to get something, you just need to wear the hanging ring and use the portal. The Supreme Mage was very satisfied with Salomon's results, not only because Salomon embroidered exquisite patterns on this leather satchel, but also because Salomon did not focus on those things that could cause damage or defend himself. Magic, he is interested in magic as a whole, not in fighting with magic. These are two different attitudes. For the mages of Kamataj, there is not much need to learn magic that is not useful in battle. Learning one or two is enough. Salomon's the attitude is, no matter good or bad, useful or useless, he has to learn, as long as it is interesting enough. Learning magic with these two completely different attitudes, the achievements are naturally different. In Salomon's mind, a mage should be a versatile character who can deal with all situations, and can use magic to deal with it at any time, instead of becoming a battlefield turret. That's what warlocks and kineticists should do, has nothing to do with mages. If you want to gain a place on the battlefield, modern technology can do it, why bother to learn magic? In the winter of 2007, Salomon spent time studying hard until the spring festival came. This day does not have any special significance for non-celestial people, and the headquarters of Kamataj will not choose to celebrate, but His Holiness will still give the Hong Kong Temple a holiday for everyone to celebrate the festival. As a result, Salomon got an extra holiday on Saturday. Master Xiao Wang came to him specially on that day, saying that he would take him to visit Chinatown in New York. Wang lowered his voice and said to Salomon quietly, "It's not good to study magic all the time. You are too young, and the task given to you by His Holiness is too heavy. You should get in touch with the secular society more. I am not talking bad about His Holiness. I just don't want you to be a nerd." After experiencing the mission in the small town of Salem, Master Wang successfully signed the contract with Emperor Wysand. Now Master Wang has become arrogant, and no one says he can't be a mage anymore. And after signing the contract, his magic attainments have improved by leaps and bounds, and he has now become a low-level deacon in the Hong Kong Temple. One of the important reasons why he came to Salomon this time was that he wanted Salomon to see him. How powerful it has become! Salomon smiled and threw a satchel to Wang, which was a gift he had prepared for Master Wang. He had prepared a few dimensional bags before, except for Venerable Modu and himself, all of them were sent out, and the rest was specially given to Mage Xiao Wang by him. As Salomon, your adventure partner, is naturally eligible to receive gifts. Master Xiao Wang is also very satisfied with this gift. Now that he has a surplus in living expenses, he can naturally buy some snacks and put them in. This dimensional bag allows him to get food anytime, anywhere. "Let's go," Salomon said, "I still need you to lead the way. I can't wait to eat Sichuan food." End of this chapter. Chapter 22. The components of the Priory of the Magi. Salomon's study period is much longer than other mages, not only because of his disciple of the Supreme Mage, but more importantly because of his age. Kamataj would never allow a minor to take up a position in the temple, no matter how powerful Salomon's magic was. In the eyes of everyone, he still needed to learn. Therefore, he naturally did not have the idea of quick success, but followed the courses arranged by the Supreme Mage and Athena day after day. This is very important. The accumulation of basic knowledge will be of great help to Salomon in the future. If Salomon, like Strange, uses translation software to read those grimoires that have been cracked, if he encounters a grimoire that needs to be interpreted in the ruins without the internet, he will be helpless. Language literacy cannot decode secret messages hidden in words or symbols, such as magic runes. These codes are not part of the written language, and reading grimoires needs to be deciphered. The same is true for wizards' magic books and scrolls, and there is a failure rate in copying. Therefore, His Holiness attaches great importance to Salomon's linguistics education, and in order to let Salomon understand modern society, in His Holiness knowledge, Salomon only understands magic but not science. The Ancient One the Mage also specially arranged for the London Temple to find a school for Salomon, and Salomon would take the exam when he was old enough. He had already taken the Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 exams when he was 7 years old. With the results of this SATS exam, Salomon can also successfully take the entrance exams that he must take when he is 13 years old. Although he didn't go to school once, the London Temple settled the issue with the money. This is the first time Kamataj has done such a thing. Because the school-age children in Kamataj at most practice martial arts, and then go to secular schools, such as Alice Gulliver, the guardian of the Hong Kong Temple Wugihu daughter, at most, she came to the headquarters of Kamataj to learn the art of body protection. There has never been any minor who has devoted himself to the study of magic like Salomon. Although Salomon didn't seem to feel uncomfortable with this almost isolated life, but enjoyed it, Master Guyi still worried that this kind of life detached from the secular society would make Salomon develop a withdrawn character. Sometimes the Venerable even suspected that he had passed on his indifferent personality to Salomon. This is not possible, This kind of personality cannot deter those extra-dimensional creatures who try to invade the earth. The happiness of a dead house is unimaginable to others. Salomon is still changing the posters in his bedroom every 3 months. Thanks to his proficiency in language, he can watch the new episodes broadcast at the fastest speed. Translate. It is difficult for others to understand Salomon's happiness. As long as he has the internet and food, he can stay in the house forever. Except for Mount Athena, he doesn't need to go out at all. His wife this month was Hollow, a maiden with a wolf's tail and ears, no objection. New program in January 2008. This kind of life is extremely abnormal in the eyes of outsiders. There have been countless times that Master Xiao Wang tried to pull Salomon out of the room so that he could take him to the street for a stroll. However, Salomon refused. The rainy weather in London made him a little uncomfortable. If he wanted to eat fish and chips, or if he wanted to go to the British Museum, he would go by himself. New York, it's better not to show up there. Who knows when a big green fat guy will suddenly appear there and beat and smash. Maybe there may be two. He goes to Hong Kong a lot. He is outside the temple a frequent visitor to that snack street. Now Salomon can speak fluent Cantonese to communicate with those stall owners. As for entertainment, what entertainment is better than magic? Isn't the most amazing thing in the world interesting enough, my friend? The only thing that makes Salomon a little uncomfortable is the need to face the dark dimension from time to time. I've known my wife Audria since I was your age. Casilios was very friendly to Salomon. When it comes to lawman, he tends to guide without tires. He said to Salomon, who was staying in the room, "You should go out more, instead of soaking in books all the time. The work of Karmitage is not so heavy that you need to share it. You should go to school to know some girl. Staying in Karmitage all the time will make you look like an old man. If my child was still alive, he would be as old as you, and maybe I would risk being sued to let him taste the beer. Anyway, it is not a good thing to stay in the room all the time. If you want to exercise, you can come to me." Casilios kept his head down when he said this. Salomon couldn't see his expression clearly. Was it grief? Still miss? But looking back a few years later, Salomon can only recall the cold smell of the cold wind blowing from the Himalayas mixed with the decaying dust in the room, and the grey-haired man standing in front of him who lost everything. Man. It is said that Casilios was introduced by Baron Mordo. Because Kamitage's purpose has always been to lend a helping hand to those in need. Of course, these people must have magical talents. Except for those recruited by His Holiness himself, such as Salomon and Strange, almost all other mages got started in this way. The original Karmitage was established by the Ancient One through this method. His Holiness's idea is similar to escape into the empty door, because only those who have almost lost everything are attracted by the direction lock of Karmitage that protects the earth, so that they cannot be tempted by worldly wealth and honor, and wholeheartedly take on the responsibility of the outer dimension. The responsibility of combat is why Karmitage pays attention to clean practice. The purpose is to calm down the tortured soul of the practitioner. It cannot be said that such an idea is not good. The selection criteria of the Ancient One Mage has lasted for more than 1,000 years. This system has withstood the test of time, but there are still many apprentices similar to Casilios. Not all of them are willing to immerse themselves in the world of magic like Salomon. Some people are attracted by the idea of Karmitage, such as Modu. He was attracted by the idea of the mage monastery to protect the earth, and volunteered to become a mage to resist the outer dimension. He has been committed to fighting for more than 1,000 years. The Ancient One Mage in the outer dimension is extremely revered. There are also some people, those mage families. These people are all combined by mages who first practiced in Karmitage, and they are all descendants of the first batch of disciples of His Holiness, such as Wang and Wugihu. This part of people is also an important part of Karmitage. These people have spent their whole lives in Karmitage. They have accepted the teachings of the Venerable for generations. There are still a few people in these families who have been infinitely close to the position of the Supreme Master. But batch after batch were boiled to death by His Holiness. Despite this, they are important supporters of the Ancient One. And those practitioners recruited from the world are often not pure enough. They still have regrets in the world, such as Casilios. His purpose is to see his wife again, or learning magic is just to find a way out. To achieve the purpose is that no one in Karmitage has entered the secular world to dominate the world after learning magic, or do evil and enjoy things that ordinary people can't match. Although His Holiness has no prejudice against material enjoyment, for those who use magic to misbehave, Master Ancient One has also done some bloody cleanups. In modern times, Master Guyi seldom does this kind of thing, and the reason is very simple. with the progress of the times, the amount of information that modern people gain in a day far exceeds that in the past. There is a good chance that Karmitaj will be gone. His Holiness is well aware of the fact that there will be no fish when the water is clear, so His Holiness has also relaxed the selection criteria for new members of Karmitaj. It doesn't matter if you come to Karmitaj for a purpose, as long as you don't use magic to do evil, as long as you take the responsibility of protecting the earth, you can do anything. Only the belief in Domamu is absolutely intolerable to the Ancient One. Now it seems that Salomon's soul seems to be too calm. So Master Guyi planned to ask Salomon to do something. End of this chapter. Chapter 23 The Vampires of Port Corinth. It is a well-known fact in Karmitaj that Salomon knows some novel but useless magic. The apprentices staying in the Himalayan headquarters sometimes saw Salomon sitting out of nowhere on an invisible floating object, holding a sheet in his hand, and the howling wind blew past him. At this time, Salomon would wave the sheet in his hand and be pushed forward by the strong wind until he hit the wall. Sometimes they could still see Baron Mordo chasing behind Salomon. Every time Baron Mordo looked annoyed, but no matter how he waved the scepter in his hand, he couldn't catch up with the man who was sailing in Kazakhstan. Drifting Salomon in Madaj. Mordo was a little dissatisfied with Salomon's focus on those humble magic ideas. In his opinion, Salomon should learn more powerful magic while he was young, so that he could play a role in the battlefield of external dimensions in the future. But when Baron Mordo put forward his opinion to the Supreme Mage, His Holiness said that this is Salomon's own choice, and Karmitaj will not interfere with how everyone chooses magic. If Salomon chooses to learn magic because it is interesting, then magic, His Holiness will not interfere. Magic that cannot fight is not good magic. This kind of thinking abounds in Karmitaj, and Mordo is no exception. Therefore, Mordo does not want to correct Salomon's wrong concept all the time. He tries to make Salomon get back on track and become a useful mage. But whenever he wants to catch up with Salomon, Salomon can hide in the mirror dimension as quickly as possible, so that no one can find him. Salomon was naturally a little impatient with Mordo's inexplicable insistence. In his opinion, there is no such thing as magic, only useless mages. Any inconspicuous magic may play a huge role, even in the training of Karmitaj. He can rely on the Toril crystal. The magic of the wall system and the magic of the Weiss Sandy system are an enemy of the crowd. Of course, his training objects are all low-level apprentices. If it is Casilios or Mordo, they will not cast spells on Salomon of time. I didn't want you to travel so early, Salomon. The Venerable poured a large spoonful of honey into Salomon's tea. The taste of the ancient master Salomon has never been flattering. Every dessert the Venerable eats is so sweet, whether it is orange soda or tea, a spoonful of honey is indispensable. But Salomon still obediently drank the tea that was so sweet that he couldn't drink the taste of tea. He will always look like a good baby in front of the Venerable. I don't want to travel either. Salomon curled his lips and muttered, wouldn't it be nice to stay in Karmitaj? And the internet? Master Ancient One didn't seem to hear Salomon's protest, she just poured herself a cup of tea. His Holiness said, I want to give you a task that can only be carried out by you alone. Wang is now a deacon in the Hong Kong temple. He has no time and is not fit to know about it. I want you go after a book, and the closest clue to this book is 200 years ago. What book? Salomon asked curiously. In his mind, the book the Venerable needs to find must be a very important magic book. That book is very dangerous. His Holiness said, this is a long task. I don't ask you to find that book immediately. The last clue I traced was 237 years ago. A witch used her magic turned a human into a vampire. The magic that can create a vampire all comes from the Dark God book. The Book of Weiss Handy is the perfect nemesis of that book. There are corresponding counterspells in the Book of Emperor Weishan. His Holiness picked up the teacup and took a sip of the sweet tea, and continued, your destination is Port Corinth, Maine. Don't worry, as for Athena, I will help you ask for leave. Cough, 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 cough. Salomon tried his best to break free from the dense branches that entangled him, and crawled out of the bushes covered in grass leaves, looking disheartened. He looked around, and when he found no one around, he breathed a sigh of relief, and used a little trick to clean up the dirt and fallen leaves on his body. The location where he opened the portal was inaccurate, and he couldn't blame him, because he only relied on a map and Karmitaj's planetary defense system to determine the location, and falling into the bushes was not his intention. Before Salomon came to Port Corinth, he had consulted local legends. He needed to do his homework when facing any enemy. This was the most important principle taught to him by those mages in those memories. Salomon I did as well. According to legend, more than 200 years ago, Barnabas Collins, the owner of the famous local family and the fishing giant Corinth family, was a vampire, but was put into a coffin by angry local residents. This matter, like the witch burning and the Salem witch case, was done by those fanatical Puritans, and this kind of thing is now brought up by outsiders and laughed at from time to time. But according to the clues provided by His Holiness, there was indeed such a vampire in Port Corinth, so Salomon determined that the vampire was probably Barnabas Corinth. But Salomon couldn't believe it. Because no matter how weak a vampire is, it cannot be subdued by ordinary people. But the witch that His Holiness mentioned made him more vigilant. His goal was to find that witch, because since she can curse people into vampires, then she must have come into contact with Dark God Book, or have been in contact with the knowledge about Dark God Book. Salomon also heard that the Collins family's manor had caught fire in 1972, and the current Collingwood Manor was rebuilt and restored later, which made him suspicious. So instead of recklessly going to Collingwood Manor to find out, Salomon first went to the local library to find information. In 1972, many major incidents occurred in Port Corinth. For example, someone found the bodies of 9 workers in the woods beside Highway 11. This incident caused an uproar at the time, and the local media also reported the situation in detail. Salomon also found the news at that time in the pile of old newspapers. According to reports, the throats of those workers were all bitten into pieces. The police believed that the crime was committed by a perverted killer. A black coffin was also dug up. Seeing the bloody photos in the old newspapers, Salomon's heart beat faster, and the shadows in the corner of the library piled up in his heart. He continued to look through the old newspapers, and then he found another piece of news. That same year, there was an explosion at the Collins family's canning plant. Afterwards, the newspaper described in a joking tone the love and hatred between Angie, the hostess of Angel Bay, and the Collins family, another local fishing giant, and the disappearance of Angelique Bouchard after the Collingwood Manor caught fire. Immediately afterwards, it seemed that everyone had forgotten that Angelique Bouchard disappeared at Collingwood Manor, and no information about this woman was reported in the newspapers. In future newspapers, there will be explaining the fact that Angelique Bouchard disappeared in her own home. The more Salomon thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong, and he hurriedly searched through the earlier newspapers. Although the ink was black and white, the blurry picture could not stop the woman's exquisite appearance and charming style. When Angelique Bouchard's mother had just passed away, she had long blonde hair with slightly curly shawl and deep dark hair. Red lips alone garnered a lot of support for her. And this woman's powerful business methods are exactly the same as her mother's. She even controls more than 95% of the ships in the Big Beach area, while the Collins family can only eat leftovers, and cannot even maintain a huge manor. It took Salomon a long time to find the portraits of the Bouchard family in the collection of old papers in the library through spells such as enchanting humans, but none of the male members of this family had left portraits. There has also been controversy among the people over who Angelique Bouchard's father is. Although the hair color is different, Salomon can still tell at a glance that Angelique Bouchard has the same face as her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. This is the witch. Where is she now? End of this chapter. Chapter 24. The wizard comes to the door. Salomon left the library, found a taxi in this small town, and headed to Angel Bay in the outskirts. When getting on the bus, Salomon made up a set of lies and chatted with the driver. He just doesn't like socializing, and he will still lie when he should lie. According to the taxi driver, he has lived in this town since he was a child. The name of this town is very common, and there have never been any scarce mineral resources. There is almost no way out except fishing. The public high school grades in the town it's also very bad. Young people can't find a way out and can only go to big cities to ask for a living. In general, this town is just a microcosm of countless ordinary farming and fishing towns in the United States. But Salomon still used the method of leading the conversation to make the driver reveal more information unintentionally. He mentioned the Collins family intentionally or unintentionally. This aroused the interest of the dark-skinned mixed-race driver who had lived in the town from a young age. According to him, the hostess of Port Angel was a heartthrob before she disappeared. She was a kind and beautiful woman. Met Angelique Bouchard once. He babbled in that unique accent, waving an arm while speaking, and would even dance if he didn't have to hold the steering wheel. Hey, brother, let me tell you, I saw her when I was a child. Damn, I have never seen such a beautiful woman. The protagonist of my spring dreams is still her. Don't tell my wife about this. Are you questioning me? I tell you, once you see her, you won't ask that. I will never forget her in a red dress, and I tell you, you won't see that in any big city beauty, even if you are in New York or Los Angeles, I guarantee that no woman can be more beautiful than her. With great difficulty, Salomon sorted out some information in the driver's rhythmic speech. The general meaning is that after Angelique Bouchard disappeared, Port Corinth of the Corinthian family once again occupied the dominance of the fishing industry in the town. No one knew where Angelique Bouchard went. The town, every aging man in the world will miss that woman who is as unpredictable as a dream. Haven't you heard where Angelique Bouchard disappeared? Salomon asked casually. I think the police will try their best to find such a taxpayer, right? I don't know. The driver shrugged his shoulders. It is said that the Bouchard family came here suddenly, appeared suddenly, and disappeared suddenly. This is very reasonable. Yeah, it's very reasonable. Salomon looked out of the car window worriedly. The vehicle slowly drove into Port Angel. Since Angelique Bouchard disappeared, the situation here has gone from bad to worse, and resources have been frequently occupied by Port Corinth. Fishermen refused to sell their catch to Port Angel. The former canning factory was dilapidated, and there were still decaying fishing boats and fishing nets in the safe haven. Only hungry seagulls would visit here. On the pile, try to pick up some rotten fish to eat. Salomon felt that the fine net made of black silk threads extended from the Collins family, covering the entire town, just like the fine net used when fishing for sardines, and caught everything that could not pass through the mesh, such as the police, such as media. If Salomon hadn't found enough doubts and clues in the pile of old papers in the library, no one would have thought that the Corinthian family, which seemed to provide economic sources for the town, would have such deep darkness. Since 1972, homicides have always occurred in small towns, but police investigations and media reports always fall by the wayside and close the cases hastily. At first, some people were interested in mentioning the horrors of those corpses, but later on, no one was interested in the victims whose throats were bitten. Salomon paid a lot of money to hire the driver, and let him take him around the town all day until late at night. After they made an appointment to see each other the next day, Salomon opened the portal in an unoccupied corner and returned to the Carmitage headquarters. It is not dark at Carmitage now, but Salomon still fell asleep, investigating and rummaging through those disorganized materials, and finding useful clues from them is too exhausting. When he woke up, he began to prepare the things he needed to face vampires, such as silver, and some specific spell-casting materials. After finishing one of the 3 meals in a hurry, Salomon opened the portal again and returned to Corinth Port. There, the driver was waiting for him. Colin Manor. Salomon's first words after sitting in the co-pilot, his face was cold, and he seemed to be mentally prepared. In fact, he planned to ask the witch for clues from Barnabas Collins, and if necessary, he would clean up the vampire by the way. They are cursed. Perhaps because Salomon spent a lot of money, the old driver didn't want Salomon to go to that gloomy place, even though the Collins family supported many people in the town, but they are still unpopular. It doesn't matter. Salomon murmured, I just went to them for the curse. Willie. Stop drinking. You bald drunkard without a hair. Clean up the hall. Do you hear me? Cried Caroline Stoddard, standing on the wide steps at the end of the living room. Even though it is daytime, the heavy black woolen curtains in the living room are still drawn tightly, only a few rays of light come in, and the rest of the living room is still immersed in shadows. Caroline is a girl with a graceful figure, slightly plump, and even time has not stayed on her body for long. In middle age, her figure is not out of shape at all, and she still has a very charming buttocks. Not for nothing was she standing on the steps yelling, and her slightly autistic brother, David Collins, dropped food on the carpet again. Under her roar, David with black curly hair couldn't help shivering, and the curly hair on his forehead trembled. Calm down, Caroline. A silver-haired woman sitting on the sofa said after moving the chess piece a step. Although she is very old, she still thinks and moves quickly. She said, don't make David too nervous. Also, Willie is old, so please be considerate of his slow movement. You still don't want me to transform you into a vampire. I think you have experienced the consequences of aging, Elizabeth. Sitting on the opposite sofa is a pale man with short black hair and 18, the classic clothing of British men in the th century. The black coat is inlaid with many gemstones of different colors. Both the cuffs and the hem are extremely gorgeous, and the neck is tied with a white lace bow tie. After thinking for a while, he moved the chess piece. He said, we've rebuilt the Collins family, you see everything in this living room, after that fire, these exquisite sculptures and collections are all you get, and this. He pointed to the crystal chandelier above his head. I hope you can keep watching and witness the Corinthian family stepping into glory again. Aging is the joy of life. You can't understand it. I'm tired. I'll leave the rest to Caroline and David. Age did not affect Elizabeth's elegance. She said, "Ba Nabas, it's time for you to go." "Willie. Willie. Where are you?" Caroline raised her voice when she saw that Willie was not in front of her. Immediately after the sound of hurried footsteps came, the door of the hall suddenly opened. Willie, who didn't have a single hair on his head, ran in panting, "Master, hi, hi, hi. Relax, relax." Barnabas picked up a glass with his sharp-nailed palm, stood up, walked over to Willie, and handed the glass to him. "Drink, Willie, and tell me, what happened?" "Someone, here." Willie drank the sparkling wine in one gulp. "Hi. Is it the police? Or the newspaper?" Barnabas turned around and stopped paying attention to Willie. He looked at Elizabeth. "I promise I've solved it all." "No, it's not the police, and it's not the newspaper," Willie said with wide-eyed horror. "He looks like a wizard." End of this chapter. Chapter 25 Vampires Who Believe in God. Willie's words made the Collins family feel like an enemy. No one ever doubted the truth of what Willie said. He was a servant of the Corinthian family and had served the Corinthian family all his life. Although he was bald, drunk, and unkempt, he was still a good servant. The Collins family had seen magic before. Barnabas Collins became a vampire because of the curse of a witch, and that witch once caused a lot of trouble for the Collins family. Barnabas Collins was leaning on a cane with a copper head, and his 10 fingers with sharp nails couldn't help shaking. "Okay, Willie," Barnabas said, "how about we invite that wizard in? Maybe he's just passing by. I think he might be friendly enough, otherwise an iron gate can't stop a wizard." "Okay, Master Barnabas." Willie wiped the cold sweat from his brow, and walked out of the hall tremblingly. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't afraid of anything, it was just the after effect of alcoholism. Willie doesn't even have a good impression of people who can do magic. The last time a witch came to the house to make trouble, the Collingwood Manor was burnt down. Fortunately, with the support of Lord Barnabas and Mistress Elizabeth, the current Collingwood Manor is much better than the original one. At least the central air conditioner can be turned on. "Come here quickly, children." Barnabas patted the sofa beside him. "We may have to receive an ancient guest, but we must not let others think that the Corinthians have lost their etiquette." At the insistence of Barnabas, Caroline Stoddard and David Collins reluctantly sat on the sofa and waited for the guests. But when Willie brought the guests in, everyone in the Collins family breathed a sigh of relief. "Ha!" Barnabas couldn't help laughing. David almost jumped up from the sofa in fright. Standing behind Willie was a boy with short black hair and wearing a dark red robe. "I remember it's not Halloween yet. Willie, why don't you give our little wizard some candy? I don't know you have such a sense of humor." "It's okay, though." He stood up, picked up his cane, walked towards the boy dressed like a wizard, held his head up and said, "Congratulations, little wizard, although you came at the wrong time, you still got a one-day tour of Collin Manor voucher, including board and lodging, will be a memory you will never forget. Now, Willie, take our sweet little wizard to dinner and get him a guest room, he looks like he never slept well." "Feel the same." Salomon didn't relax because of the words of the man with short black hair in front of him. He felt a little strange when he just stepped into Collingwood Manor. Compared with other places, the lush bushes were at least half withered, and the branches are twisted and covered with thorns. Perhaps this only shows that the gardener is a drunkard, but as far as Salomon found, there were far more mice in the garden than in other places. According to his investigation, the Collins family is not happy, and the food thrown away every day cannot feed such a large group of mice. And many of the phenomena he discovered would appear near the vampire's lair. Therefore, Salomon believed even more firmly that Barnabas Collins was staying in Collin Manor. "I'm looking for someone," Salomon said. His words caused Barnabas, who had just turned his head and wanted to go back to the sofa, to turn around again. "This person knows the information I want." The vampire looked at Salomon out of the corner of his eye. Now he knew that this strangely dressed little wizard was not some lost child, but had a purpose. Salomon's words also caught the attention of the rest of the Collins family. Caroline Stoddard, who was originally sitting on the sofa board, suddenly leaned forward and let out a low whine from her throat. Elizabeth put her hand on Caroline's shoulder, and she asked, "Who? You are asking for the help of the Collins family." Barnabas came over again. He pushed Willie aside, and looked down into Salomon's eyes. Suddenly, his voice became extremely gentle. "Tell me. Who sent you to Collin Manor?" "Of course it's me." Salomon smiled. "Your magic is useless to me, but if you didn't cast spells on me, I really can't be sure of your identity, Mr. Barnabas Collins. The vampire jumped back suddenly, his eyes widened, and he pointed at Salomon with his cane. Are you really a wizard? How old are you? Accurately, it's a occult mage. Salomon said, it's going to be 13 years old soon. Cough cough, please be serious, I represent the master of the earth, and the mage hermit will ask you questions. Salomon snapped his fingers, and the Carmitage logo appeared in front of him, which was enough to prove his identity. As soon as Barnabas heard about Salomon's age, he immediately relaxed. He nodded very relaxed, expressing that he would definitely cooperate with all his strength. As for what the mage's retreat was, he didn't understand at all. But if you want to eliminate a vampire, how can you send a 13 years old mage apprentice? Whether this age can recognize all the characters is still a problem. First question. Salomon looked at the people sitting on the sofa. Where is Angelique Bouchard? Then I want to ask, what is her relationship with you? Barnabas asked with doubts. It doesn't matter, it's just that she has something she shouldn't have. Salomon said, for example, she cursed you to become a vampire. This kind of profound magic can only come from a very dangerous magic book. The congregation suspects that she has ever been in contact with that book, or in other words, with the knowledge handed down from that book. Didn't she sell her soul to Satan? Barnabas opened his mouth in surprise. As long as you study the knowledge in that book, you will sell your soul to a terrible existence, but not Satan, but another one. Salomon sat on the sofa following Barnabas' guidance, and opposite him, Caroline was looking at him maliciously. But Salomon didn't want to ignore her, his eyes were fixed on Barnabas until the vampire sat across from him. Who? The vampire asked, and he kept gesticulating with the word M with one hand. Isn't this a symbol of Satan? I can't name the one who was the father of black magic. The one who created a book, and the knowledge in that book created the world's first vampire. Mr. Barnabas, you don't not the first vampire. Sorry, I don't drink tea. Do you think an ordinary witch has the ability to create a queen vampire like you, with such a high personality, without paying any price? Salomon said, I found the portraits of the Bouchard family, the portraits are all of the same person. Obviously, Angelique Bouchard obtained eternal life through that knowledge. That book is extremely dangerous, I must recycling, even transcribed knowledge. Now, please tell me, where is Angelique Bouchard now? My magic can completely restrain her black magic, and she will not be my opponent. You mean, you can turn me into a human? Barnabas Collins leaned forward sharply. You said, you can restrain her magic, that is to say, you can lift my curse. Yes, but this is related to my second question. Thank God. Barnabas obviously didn't have the patience to listen to the words behind him. Thank God. I can finally stop drinking blood. How is this going? Salomon looked at Barnabas in a daze. He was extremely careful when talking. Not only did he refuse to take any food, but he was still pinching his hands, ready to cast spells at any time. But now the vampire, the one who made him feel like an enemy, thanked God loudly in front of him. Kneel down and pray. Is there something wrong with him? Why hasn't this vampire turned into ashes yet? End of this chapter. Chapter 26 The Witch's Tale. Mr. Barnabas. Lord Jesus, please reveal my heart of prayer, touch me with your hand, make me strong and courageous in all things. Mr. Barnabas. You are the source of my life and save my life. I am full of joy and hope in you. Even when I walk in darkness, your light always shines. Salomon breathed a sigh of relief. He gave up. He felt that the vampire in front of him might have some brain problems. If the local legend and the facts he investigated were correct, the vampire might be buried in a coffin for 200 years. It is reasonable to have a little mental problem in the matter. He looked at the Collins family sitting on the opposite sofa. They didn't respond to the vampire's behavior. Instead, they served Salomon biscuits. Even Caroline, who was very wild, relaxed and fiddled with the vampire. Nail. Only David Collins tried to stop Barnabas, but he too was pulled into prayer. Master David, said the vampire, I have sold my soul to the devil, and now I can go to heaven only by praying. Does he do this often? Salomon refused the desserts offered by the Collins family. He pointed to his brain and asked the Collins family. Very often. As long as Victoria is not around, he will. The silver-haired Elizabeth didn't mind Salomon's refusal of food. She said to Salomon solemnly, before you came, there was many people have come to our house, claiming to help us lift the curse, and when the ancestors appeared in front of us, we knew that the curse was real. The black magic in that book can only be deciphered in the Book of Visinder. Salomon shook his head, but, Ms. Elizabeth, my purpose is to find that book, or, transcribe those papers or books of knowledge. This is my purpose. I can help you. Barnabas jumped up from the ground, and he sat beside Salomon in the air conditioning. His movements were amazingly fast, and key collections have become relics and are kept in the museum. But this is Corinth Port, established by the Corinth family. I can help you get those things, but... The relic? Salomon asked. This is my first question. Where is Angelique Bouchard? She died. Barnabas pursed his lips, his eyes were down, his hands rested on the cane, and his fingers moved restlessly. He died here, under his own curse. Seeing the puzzlement on Salomon's face, Barnabas talked about his past. It's my fault, said the vampire. This matter has to start from 1750. At that time, Joshua Collins and Naomi Collins brought their young son, Barnabas Collins, the vampire pointed to himself, all the way from England to the United States. They wanted to pursue a better life. A small town on the coast of Maine established its own fishing kingdom and named it after itself Port Corinth. Collins Manor was also built at that time. The vampire pointed around, but it's not the current one, it was renovated later. I think you should know about it. The original Collins Manor took 15 years to build, and after 20 years, I have grown up too. Barnabas Collins is rich and powerful, but he's also an obsessive playboy until one day, he makes a mistake that he never regrets. Having said this, the vampire stood up, and he raised one hand, as if beating something. I fell in love with a beautiful woman named Josette Duples, said Barnabas mournfully, but I broke Angelique Bouchard's heart because I can't marry her. Barnabas still remembers the gloomy weather that day and the biting cold wind blowing from the sea. On that day, Angie controlled Josette to jump off the cliff and fell on the reef by the sea. Barnabas was distraught, and also jumped down. But she cursed me and wanted me to experience a fate worse than death. The vampire waved his arms excitedly. He walked up and down the living room with hurried steps, and the sound of leather shoes colliding on the marble floor kept ringing, until the cold sea woke me up, and when I woke up from the reef, I found Josette lying next to me. Her body had become cold, and my fingers were sharpened, and my eyes were bleeding, like the devil from hell came to the world. I saw the witch standing on the top of the mountain. She cursed me loudly. I am extremely thirsty, no matter how much water I drink, I can't suppress this desire, I can never appear in the sun. Angelique can curse me to become a vampire, so that my pain will never end. I think you know what happened next. Angelique led the villagers holding torches to Collin Manor. She identified me as a devil, and the villagers sealed me in a coffin and buried me in the ground. Vampire. His tone became slow. After 200 years, I was dug out and came back here. At that time, only Elizabeth believed in my identity. Of course, it wasn't because my portrait was hanging in the living room. The vampire pointed to the wall, where his portrait was hanging. It was one of the rare people who escaped the fire. Until one day a governess named Victoria Winters came to Collin Manor. According to Barnabas, this Victoria looks exactly like Josette. After he returned to the family, he sold the family's treasures, allowing the Corinthian family to develop again. At the same time, he also had an affair with Victoria. Everything was so beautiful. But what you said is that it's the most fertile buttock you've ever seen. Caroline didn't show any face to her ancestors. But Barnabas ignored her. But... that witch. Angelique Bouchard knew the fact that I woke up. The vampire became emotional again. The angel bay she created controls most of the fishing industry in Corinth Port, making the Corinth family unable to make ends meet. She spread her hatred to the Collins family. She wanted to let the blood of the Collins family spill into the streets. I can't stand it. When I woke up, she wanted to do to Victoria what she did in Josette. What happened? That vicious woman. All in all, we had a fight when she tried to confuse the residents and the police to arrest me by using the methods she used to do. Her skin shattered like glass, and the Collingwood Manor was on fire because of this. The Collins family, the most important properties were burned. She's dead, said Salomon, and you're standing here. Yes, she took out her heart, a heart like pink glass, covered with cracks. Barnabas said in a low voice, I saw her heart shatter into pieces with my own eyes, and she was like a puppet, motionless. It's an interesting story, Mr. Barnabas. Salomon raised his vigilance secretly, and took out a few pieces of printing paper from the pouch on his waist. Tell me, which murders did you commit? End of this chapter. Chapter 27 All Villains. Don't get me wrong. Salomon is not some hero who is eager for justice. Those people are dead, and late justice is worthless. He just wants to know some information he needs. You must know that although vampires are classified as undead, they can still reproduce. They can give birth to children through the same reproduction method as humans, and they can also transform humans into new vampires through the form of first embrace. And the behavior of first embrace is a kind of covenant of blood, a magical contract that cannot be betrayed. This kind of contract flows in the blood of vampires and is passed down from generation to generation. Barnabas Collins has a very special identity. He is a vampire transformed directly from the magic in the dark book of God. Perhaps he himself is not aware of how high his personality is. Many years ago, the gang, the so-called pure-blood and half-blood vampires entrenched in Detroit, bowed their heads when they saw him. His Holiness then told Salomon the group of vampires who summoned the so-called blood god as a joke. It's just that Salomon couldn't see the group of vampires anymore, they were all killed by a guy named Blade Warrior. The current Barnabas is still very young, for a vampire, and he hasn't accumulated much power, otherwise Salomon would not dare to come to see him rashly. Salomon just wanted to know if Barnabas had reproduced like a mouse, so that he could know how many vampires there were in this town. I admit, I was just dug out at the construction site on Route 9, and I was really thirsty. Barnabas spoke with a strong Southern English accent, and he pinched a piece of paper with his fingertips. Printing paper, hold it far away. He looked it over and said, oh, and there's this, a bunch of hippies whose blood tastes awful from taking that shitty drug. Only these. Salomon maintained a smiling face. From the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the Collins family sitting opposite him, who was already a little impatient. Caroline became gloomy again, and David also retreated quietly. Tensed up. But Salomon didn't seem to notice anything wrong. He said, I want to confirm one thing, that is, Mr. Barnabas, have you transformed humans? You mean first embrace? There's only one. The vampire shook his head violently. Sir? Forgot to ask for your name. De Monette. Okay, Mr. De Monette. The vampire folded his hands over his heart. I had the idea of transforming Elizabeth into a vampire, but she rejected it. Liz, Elizabeth's nickname, enjoys aging. And Victoria. She did not escape Anki poisonous hands. After being killed by Anki, I transformed her, and this allowed her to survive. If this is also a crime, I am willing to bear it. Then there are two vampires here. Salomon stood up and pushed the rest of the printing paper in front of Barnabas. So the rest of these were all committed by your wife Victoria? No, no, no. Barnabas pushed the printing paper back, and he was not offended by the quantifiers Salomon used. He shook his head violently and denied, Victoria would not do such a thing. The Collins family invested in the hospital, and now we have changed to drinking blood bags from the hospital. In fact, we are also very puzzled. The only vampire I transformed is Victoria. 1. For this reason we often need to spend a lot of money to cover up the facts, and this is done to prevent people from suspecting the Collins family, although we did not do those things. Are there other vampires in this area? Salomon paced in the living room, slowly and naturally distanced himself from the Collins family. Mr. Barnabas, please think about it, whether you have been transformed another human. The bite marks on those corpses cannot be faked. According to what you said, I don't think that witch will transform other vampires. She is affectionate enough. The vampire walked around the living room with his head bowed, his cane banging on the marble floor, and Barnabas kept mumbling. But no matter what, he can be sure that he only transformed Victoria. In fact, the Collins family has investigated those cases through the police more than once, but in the end they found nothing. Later, in order to hide the traces of the Collins family, Barnabas could only use his ability to control people's hearts to prevent the police from continuing to investigate. But the Collins family still found a clue of another vampire. No, I'm sure. Barnabas stopped in the end. Elizabeth kept winking at Barnabas. The vampire took a look and swallowed what he wanted to say. He changed his words, but I can help you reinvestigate this matter. Very good. Salomon nodded. Please prepare the things I need. I will pick them up tomorrow. After Salomon was led by Willie to leave the hall, Elizabeth stood up with David's support. She said, You don't really believe that wizard, do you? He says he represents some priory of wizards. I'm afraid he'll bring someone. Of course not, my dear Liz. The vampire blinked. Even though Barnabas was buried in a coffin when he was young, and he was still a little innocent and romantic when he was just dug out, but as he once held as the patriarch of a big family, it is impossible for him to easily believe a stranger's proposal. And, whether he is willing or not, the negative energy entrenched in his body will make his thinking go dark and evil, which is why the so-called black magic will lead to corruption. He said, now that Victoria and I enjoy eternal youth, why should I be human? It's a pity that I can't enjoy human food. What about the other vampire? Elizabeth frowned, this may expose the Collins family. Liz, don't worry, I've got a clue, Barnabas said. Remember Julia Hoffman? A circular arc of sparks suddenly appeared in the hall of Collingwood Manor, which really startled the waiting Collins family. Poor Willie was still waiting for Salomon's arrival at the gate of the manor, but at this time Salomon had already stepped into the hall through the portal. My dear Mr. de Monette. Barnabas came up to meet him. He looked behind Salomon curiously, but saw nothing but orange sparks. He could only look down at Salomon again. It's a pity that I couldn't entertain you well yesterday, but I have already prepared everything you need. Elizabeth's eyes flickered. Although Barnabas had demonstrated some magic to her, except for the enchanting spell, everything else could only be called tricks. However, Salomon's behavior of opening the portal in the hall forced her to temporarily increase her evaluation of Salomon. The actual helm of the Corinth family changed her attitude very well, and immediately changed her and Barnabas's relationship with Barnabas yesterday's plan. Originally, the Collins family only wanted to solve another vampire entrenched in Port Corinth through the hands of Salomon. Barnabas's performance was enough to deceive most people. The vampire showed the guilt of being forced to suck blood, although this is true, and the desire to turn back into a human, which is fake. Later, when Salomon wanted to help Barnabas turn back into a human being, he killed him by surprise, completely covering up the traces of the Corinthian family. Maybe they still need to think about how to deal with the mage hermitage in the future, but when Salomon appeared, the Corinthian family had already gotten into trouble, and now they could only take one step at a time. Elizabeth secretly spat, that witch will cause trouble for the Corinthian family even if she dies. But now, Elizabeth thinks that Salomon must still have some unknown magic. Barnabas' magic has no effect on him, and the biggest reliance to kill Salomon has disappeared. Of course, she didn't think that firearms would work against wizards. She had attacked Angelique Bouchard with a shotgun, but the effect was not good. She even believed that Salomon's move was to increase deterrence, and he was probably not fooled by yesterday's performance. The implication of using this magic is I know where you are, and I can come here at any time, and you can't escape. In fact, Salomon has no idea of helping Barnabas lift the curse at all. This is beyond his ability, and he has never learned the content of the Book of Visender about lifting the curse of vampires. Even with this, it is a kind of magic, and its function must be to destroy vampires. And vampire dust is an extremely rare material for casting spells. If possible, he would not mind adding some collections to his dimensional bag. The spine and fingers of vampires are also excellent materials. Facing a primordial vampire who hadn't completely mastered his power, Salomon felt that he could still run even if he couldn't beat him. If Salomon was still the original dead house, he would not have such thoughts at all. But as said before, he may be influenced by the necromancers and masters of black magic in his memory, because while controlling some of the stigmata, he also learned the memories of some mages. So Salomon might be a little crazy right now. But no one noticed it, even the supreme mage. How could a normal person be interested in a terrifying place like the Dark Dimension? Thank you very much, Mr. Barnabas. Salomon did not shake hands with the vampire, but performed a mage etiquette. Barnabas opened his palm, then retracted it. The corner of his mouth raised, and his right hand stretched out to the huge staircase leading to the second floor from the living room. Everything you need is there, please follow me. Of course. Salomon responded with a smile. There was a twinkle of interest in his eyes, for the spellbooks, and for the vampires. End of this chapter. Chapter 28. Junk food is the conspiracy of hell. Some creatures can affect the habitat environment simply by staying in a fixed location, such as dragons. Vampires are not as powerful, but the negative energy that drives them still changes their abode. When Salomon followed Barnabas up the stairs of the manor, he felt a cold breath flowing down the steps, tightly wrapping him as a living person. The temperature here dropped 2 to 3 degrees inexplicably. Although it is not as exaggerated as when stepping into the tomb, any spellcaster who feels such negative energy can already know that there are black magic creatures living here. I'm sorry. Vicky, Victoria's nickname, can't get up to entertain you as the hostess. The vampire said, she is still young and needs a lot of sleep time. I can understand. After all, it's still daytime. Salomon nodded, but secretly raised his vigilance in case he was attacked in some dark corners. Naturally, he would not let down his vigilance because of the emotions shown by the vampire. Although those poignant love stories are very interesting, they can only be used as chatter after dinner for him. The idea of empathizing with vampires has never entered his mind. When the Supreme Mage taught him magic, he instilled a concept all the time, that is humanism. Aliens and extra-dimensional creatures have no right to survive on Earth, not to mention black magic creatures like vampires. Salomon will pretend to shed 2 tears for them after making them into spell-casting materials, but absolutely no sympathy for them while they were alive. If Salomon hadn't wanted to verify the feasibility of certain necromantic techniques in this world, he would have locked Barnabas in the mirror dimension and left him in the sun. The value of a vampire with strength and a rank similar to that of the true ancestor is horribly high. Yesterday, after you left, the Collins family contacted the museum and purchased Angie's collection. Barnabas's cane struck the wooden floor of the corridor, making a dull echo. Since this is the residence of vampires, the curtains in the corridor were all drawn tightly, not a single ray of sunlight came in. And the temperature here is much lower than the temperature on the stairs, and the sunlight that occasionally struggles through the tightly blocked curtains will also be bitten by the shadows like living creatures. Maybe Barnabas is not very powerful, but his rank and his unnatural essence are enough to cause visions in Colin Manor. The vampire said, after all, this town doesn't have a long history. Those things in the museum can only be accompanied by broken fishing boats and fishing nets. It is impossible for us to put Indian things in the museum. Now, those things live up to their value. Mr. Barnabas, Salomon asked, didn't you try to learn those things? When I was young, after my parents died, but I believe my parents didn't die by accident, I became obsessed with black magic and ancient occult. Barnabas glanced back at Salomon. It has also been proved that they died at the hands of Angie. Mr. de Monette, where are your parents? I haven't met my parents. My mother died after giving birth to me, Salomon said. I'm sorry. The vampire turned around the corner and bowed slightly in apology. It's nothing, Mr. Barnabas. I was adopted by the Supreme Master when I was born, and lived in Carmitage as a disciple of the Supreme Master. Salomon said, it is my honor, it is the dream of many people to be able to learn from the most powerful mystic on earth. However, His Holiness' expectations of me are a bit high now, and I don't think I can kill the creatures who sneaked into Earth from the lower planes. The lower plane? Barnabas asked curiously, what does that mean? It's hell and the abyss, where devils and demons live. The young mystic replied with a smile, the Venerable once killed countless creatures that came to the Earth from outer dimensions, and the name of the Supreme Mage can even make those creatures after trembling. His Holiness established Carmitage, recruited apprentices, educated mages, and has guarded the Earth for more than 1,000 years so far. Barnabas suddenly felt that the little wizard in front of him had become tricky. If it is a wizard or witch who is alone, the Corinthian family can naturally find a way to erase the traces of this person's existence, but if there is a huge organization behind this person, then this cannot be done, and in Salomon's mouth, the Supreme Mage seems to be being the most powerful magician in the whole world. Barnabas didn't want to cause trouble. The vampire now just wants to hand over those books as soon as possible, and then send Salomon away. Because even if you can kill Salomon, it won't help. The arrival of Salomon meant that someone had noticed the Collins family, and Elizabeth's plans were completely useless. But Barnabas also wants to know one more thing, that is, what does Salomon's organization think about vampires? If vampires can't be tolerated, can they really convert vampires into humans? Barnabas didn't want to involve the Corinthian family because of his relationship with Victoria. The family is the real wealth. He has always kept this sentence in his heart, and he has always carried it out consistently, otherwise he would not have used the family's treasures to revitalize the family. The spell in that book, the Book of Vishandi, has a corresponding spell to break it, but I need to know what the curse is first. This was the only answer Salomon provided, but Barnabas can't find any satisfactory answer from this. The two of them walked to Barnabas's library in such an intriguing conversation. This is the highest point of Colin Manor, with front and rear windows. The glass windows here are specially replaced with frosted ones, so that people can't see the inside clearly from the outside. The 2 black curtains here are drawn all year round, which seems superfluous. In front of a brown wooden table near the window, there are thick books and some broken scrolls, all of which are covered with thick dust without exception, and there are even 1 or 2 sticks between some books. A spider's silk wafted in the breeze from nowhere. These things seem to have been taken out of some abandoned room. In this regard, the vampire could only spread his hands, saying that he was powerless. After all, these things are all nonsense in the eyes of ordinary people. He said, the police evidence room can't fit, so it's put in the museum. It's very rare that there are no moths in this pile, Damon Mr. T. I don't think you can say too much about how well preserved the little local museum is. Indeed. Salomon nodded and said, then I will start to identify now to see what I need. But the work of identification is extremely difficult. Salomon doesn't think that a witch who has a lot of knowledge of dark god book will die so easily. The curse, and the black magic to gain long life, as for the knowledge in the dark god book, she has most likely never seen it. Therefore, Salomon can only search over and over in those books, because this knowledge is likely to be only located in 1 or 2 pages of these thick books. Barnabas hesitated to speak, and finally he couldn't help but let out a sound. This. He pointed to a mark written in gold powder in the book. Is this the mark of Mephisto? Salomon looked over. It was a gold, capital M, and the sight of the sign reminded Salomon of fried chicken and chips. No, he said with a curl of his lips. I think it's probably a fast food logo, but it's just a hell special. This was probably a windfall. It seems that we have to take a good look at who is the boss behind McDonald's. Salomon thought secretly. End of this chapter. Chapter 29. The Unbeliever. The browsing process was cumbersome, and Salomon even choked on the raised fine dust and sneezed. He covered his mouth and nose, stretched out his hand and waved a gust of wind to blow away the accumulated dust. It is not without reason that ordinary people regard these books as nonsense, because more than half of the contents of these books are short sentences with gorgeous words but meaningless words and various hearsay stories, and they really talk about the content of occultism most likely only a few pages. The oldest of these books is at most from Europe in the Middle Ages, when all kinds of liars who claimed to be wizards and alchemists were popular at that time, selling all kinds of useless elixir. Most of these books were those guys written. But no one can rule out that a few guys did understand some spells, and then wrote what they knew in the book. They will hide spells through various methods, such as poetry, such as pictures, and it is very likely that Angelique Bouchard obtained knowledge through these books. But Salomon can't just move these books back to Hermitage and then inspect them. His Holiness has already said that this task can only be performed by him, because only people like him who have faced the dark dimension can do it. Has some resistance to black magic. Therefore, Salomon could only endure the irritability and try to find out what he needed from these magic books. At least he had to make sure that the spells from the Dark God book were hidden in these books before he could be sure that the Corinthian family had no secrets. Tibetan spell. This work needs to consume a lot of his time, but only after completing all this can he proceed to the next step. In the process of rummaging through these books, Barnabas left for a while, and then he walked into the room with a huge plate, and put the plate on Salomon's table. There is a cup of black tea on the plate, some neatly arranged sandwiches, and even a few pieces of waffles and jam. When Salomon looked at him with puzzled eyes, the vampire sitting quietly by the side blinked. He said, I heard you have a British accent, so I figured you must be in the habit of drinking afternoon tea. But Willie doesn't get here normally, so I've got to bring it. Don't worry, there's no silver. I won't smoke when I touch silver products, Mr. Barnabas. Salomon continued to look back, flipping through boring books. Although he is very thirsty, he will not be stupid enough to accept the food offered by the prey in his own heart. After all, who knows if he is also a prey in the hearts of others. Seeing that Salomon didn't touch the food, Barnabas wasn't angry. He sat aside, talked to Salomon from time to time, and kept knocking around, trying to find out about Hermitage. Salomon didn't hide everything. He focused on describing the position of the supreme mage in the universe and his powerful strength. After all, he didn't believe in vampires, and he didn't believe that vampires would trust him so easily. It is still very useful at this time. But Barnabas' next question caught Salomon a little off guard. Does God really exist? Mr. de Monet, don't vampires go to heaven? Magic exists, and vampires exist. So why can't God exist? Salomon looked at Barnabas. At this time, the vampire also opened his eyes wide, waiting for Salomon's answer. The vampire at this time seemed extremely sincere. Whether or not God exists is very important to Christianity. Although the Supreme Master has shut out the power of heaven, His Holiness has not explicitly prohibited human beings from believing in God. Perhaps His Holiness wanted Christianity and the Odin faith to fight each other, but he did not expect that in the end it would become the dominant family. As for whether you can go to heaven. At this time, Salomon controlled the chair to turn in one direction, making a harsh friction sound on the floor. He said, is going to heaven a good thing? What does this mean? Barnabas dragged out his tone in doubt. He pinched the index finger and thumb of his left hand together, as if what he was pinching was what Salomon said, "Don't good people die? Should you go to heaven?" "I don't know, Mr. Barnabas." The young mystic shook his head and replied, "I think death should be silent, not in a place so bright that it's dazzling, like a fool singing hymns every day and unable to extricate himself from it. I don't want anybody to pick and choose over my soul, not even God." "Are you a believer in the devil?" the vampire asked, tilting his head. "Don't all wizards sell their souls to the devil?" "No, I am an unbeliever." Salomon showed a disdainful smile. "In my opinion, God does exist, but it is not worthy of belief. If what I do is consistent with that teaching, it is only because that teaching happened to be true to me, not because I believed in it. If I contradict it, it doesn't mean I need to be punished, but I don't believe in that teaching at all. What we need is not a God, but a human being myself. Mr. Barnabas, your family's current achievements are not dependent on God, but on your own hands." This idea is an inference drawn by Salomon based on the knowledge he has learned in his previous life, combined with the teachings of the Supreme Master. Although this idea is extremely immature now, Salomon is a thorough humanist. But what he said made Barnabas open his mouth in surprise. People with faith look down on unbelievers, no matter which world they are in. In their eyes, they are far more noble than unbelievers. Even if you don't have enough food or clothing, you can still spit on rich unbelievers. Because they are noble, people of faith. In the eyes of believers, heresy is much more hateful than heretics, and what is more hateful and unforgivable than heresy is unbelief. In their eyes, people without faith have no bottom line, are incurable, and are extremely sad. Although faith cannot make people fed and clothed, but without faith, they are not worthy of having food and clothing. If the unbelievers have food and clothing, or even a well-off life, then the unbelievers must have done something outrageous. Please don't think this idea is ridiculous, because it abounds. Theists will elevate themselves extremely high, as if they are standing with their gods. But if they just like to stand tall, nothing will happen, but unfortunately, they like to stand on high places and dictate, as if they are the extension of the will of the gods, and what they do is the will of the gods. If unbelievers form a group, these believers can justifiably bring war to them, because they are right. Unbelievers are savages who need to be civilized. And they think it is the will of God. They don't believe in the efforts of unbelievers because unbelievers lack faith. Theists cannot open their eyes to see the facts. No matter how well others do, in their view, the unbelievers must be covering up the dirty places. And no matter how bad they will become noble together with the gods they believe in, because they believe in gods, they are the Lord's shepherds, and they are qualified and necessary to guide those lost lambs. As for the operation of double standards to reverse black and white, there is no need to say more, it is just a routine behavior. The first memory Salomon accepted had extreme anti-God ideas. Perhaps influenced by this aspect, Salomon respected atheism even more. In his opinion, the current achievements of human beings do not have the slightest participation of gods. If human beings beg for mercy, the gods will only rule human beings with peace of mind. If there is no ancient one mage in this world, the current human beings will not be much better than lambs. His thinking like this is what the supreme mage expected, and unbelievers, the best weapon to face the demon gods of outer dimensions. The vampire obviously didn't expect Salomon's attitude to be so aggressive. He raised a finger and forced a smile. "I think Victoria should wake up." "Please go ahead, Mr. Barnabas." Salomon turned back expressionlessly. "I will notify you after I finish my work." End of this chapter. Chapter 30. The hunt begins. Theism has always had great influence in the Western world. Although with the development of technology, the Roman Church cannot excommunicate the king, interfere with the marriage of the king, especially Henry VIII, and cannot organize crusades. Pagans and British Puritans could not initiate witch hunting at will, but religion has always affected every aspect of the secular world. Especially in the United States, the world's #1 technological power, religion also has a very strong influence. For example, when witnesses attend, they need to press the Bible to swear, otherwise the testimony will not have legal effect. Presidential candidates must obtain the blessing and prayer of the pastor, and after being elected, they also need to press the Bible to officially take office, and the president must also appoint a White House in the U.S. military. There must also be a chaplain. If the chaplain does not pray, soldiers may not even be willing to fight. There are even seminaries in those famous universities. The college is not inferior in comparison. As stated earlier, a theist will claim to be the shepherd of God. Americans consider themselves to be soldiers of God, and all the wars they wage are just wars. They are liberating ignorance and saving the world, because they are blessed by God, they are the most correct in the world, and everyone else must learn from them. As for whether anyone will find out that the reason for the war is actually oil or something else, it depends on how the politicians deceive the masses. Today, at least half of Americans believe that religion should influence science and politics, which is one of the reasons why theistic countries often have anti-intellectual behavior. From Salomon's point of view, it would not be surprising if these Saxon savages were to inject disinfectant into their bodies with syringes someday. When the living Athena appeared in front of him, Salomon didn't offer his faith either. He didn't even believe in Weiss Handy, so how could he believe in God? In his mind, God is likely to be in existence on the same level as Odin, and Visandi is a magical entity that exists in the multiverse. His backer, the eternal God. Even for the eternal God, Salomon only expressed respect. Salomon's conclusion is that religion is useless for human development in the absence of divine magic. But Salomon will not interfere with anything. Now Western society has exhausted the scientific and enterprising spirit of the Renaissance, but this world is not peaceful. The successive alien invasions will make the Earth people understand that they are not in the universe. Not lonely. In order to survive in this universe, human beings must develop technology, and religion will be eliminated naturally. Salomon can see the end of theology without doing anything. When Salomon informed the Supreme Master of his conclusion, the Venerable was very satisfied that Salomon had such an idea, for which she also rewarded Salomon with a bottle of soda. In his holiness knowledge, Salomon's birth was full of doubts from the very beginning, and the stigmata most likely came from heaven, so Salomon possessed a magical talent that is difficult for ordinary people to match. And as the supreme mage who abducted Salomon into Karmitage, he naturally didn't want his disciples to become the lackeys of extra-dimensional creatures. Only a holy son who does not believe in God can protect the new supreme mage before he grows up. Earth. Salomon, who was currently looking up information on the top floor of Colin Manor, had developed a disdain for Barnabas. You have already become a vampire, so don't think about being able to ascend to heaven. Isn't it interesting to become a petitioner, whether it is judged whether a person can ascend to heaven according to the standards of Judaism, the Anglican Church, the Orthodox Church or the Catholic Church? I am afraid that only a very small number of people in modern society can meet that standard. If you don't believe it, open your browser history, take a look at the records, and you can understand how many crimes you have committed. This is already the 5th day Salomon spent an extremely long time screening books. Every day he would be busy until late at night before returning to Karmitage, and would open them in the hall of Colin Manor during the day. The portal, the Collins family also turned a blind eye from being startled at first glance. They could see the sparks lit up in the living room, and Salomon hurried upstairs every morning. There are many thick books and yellowing scrolls piled up at his feet. These are the books that he has eliminated, although there are 1 or 2 small magic records in them, but what he needs comes from Dark God Book. The black magic is far different, and the harm is basically 0. But after the last conversation, Barnabas no longer took the initiative to appear in front of Salomon. A guy without faith really frightened him. As one of the first families to arrive on the American continent, the coat of arms of the Corinthian family has a seahorse pattern. The seahorse coat of arms symbolizes the power of water and is a symbol of peace in the sea. At that time, no one who relied on the sea to do business was not superstitious. Under the influence of his parents, Barnabas had long been a faithful Puritan. In his opinion, no belief means no bottom line. The vampire has no idea whether Salomon will keep his promise and will not destroy him and Victoria in turn. Even God cannot guarantee whether Salomon will keep his promise. He felt that a big trouble was looming over the Collins family, and now Salomon was more annoying to the vampires than sunlight, silverware, and garlic combined. Little did he know that Salomon, who already hated ghosts, stretched his waist vigorously, and he could even hear the crisp sound of his spine stretching and stretching. When you open the curtains, you will find that the crimson afterglow of the setting sun is mixed with the grey dark clouds, dyeing the distant sea surface into an ambiguous deep pink. If Salomon hadn't felt his neck sore, he might not have realized the passage of time. And his achievements are also obvious. There are still a few books on the table now. Although it is full of nonsense that seems to be all absurd now, Salomon still found what he wanted. He didn't read the long incantation throughout, but he could understand the danger of this incantation. Now, he needs to investigate the source of this spell, because His Holiness' order is to find the Dark God Book, not just 1 or 2 spells. This is an alchemy book written in Latin, which is not surprising. The transformation of human beings into vampires is a change in the nature of life, and it is normal to be classified in alchemy books. Salomon found the author's name on the title page of the book, which is an Arabicized name Jabir, and the medieval Latin spelling is Geber, Geber. The name Jabir is often used in the most influential Latin alchemy works of the 13th century, but the Latin spelling of the name Geb belongs to another person, who just used the name of the Aragonese alchemist. That's it. He also adopted the guiding style typical of Al-Jaber's writings and rewrote some chapters of Al-Jaber's 70 books. The author even included in his text some grammatical structures and expressions that were translated into Latin but seemed to be typical of Arabic, in an attempt to confuse the real ones and use them to enhance the credibility of his work. As for why this is done, it is related to the event that alchemy spread to Europe after the exchange between Christian civilization and Arab civilization, so I won't go into details here. All in all, according to the research of later historians, the author behind this Geber is very likely to be Paul of Taranto, an Italian Franciscan priest and teacher, because Paul wrote a nearly contemporary alchemical text, which is very similar in style and content to the text of Geber. Now that text was originally stored in the library of Hermitage, and Salomon once looked through it. After confirming the next itinerary, Salomon put the book into the dimensional bag. He still had things to do. Barnabas' conjecture was indeed correct, and Salomon would not abide by the agreement, because there are also dark magic creatures in this town. Tonight, Salomon joins the hunt. End of this chapter. Chapter 31 Sharpening Stone. Salomon's footsteps were soundless, and the semicircle of orange-red flickering sparks in his hand faintly illuminated the dark corridor of Colin Manor. Perhaps because Salomon was here, the Collins family was afraid to avoid him. Even Willie, who was supposed to turn on the light, stayed away from here. When night fell, the place fell into groggy darkness. Salomon did not use lighting spells. Nor did he open the curtains to let the only sliver of light into the corridor, but just relied on the little twilight in his hands to adapt to this terrible environment. After a while, his pupils dilated slowly, allowing more reflected light to enter the eyeballs, allowing him to see a little more clearly what he passed. The black curtains swayed like living shadows in the windless corridor, the last afterglow disappeared completely after flowing into the corridor, and the night quickly enveloped the entire manor, and the cold atmosphere brought by negative energy permeated every corner. Only the 3 gemstone rings on Salomon's fingers remained intact under the sparkle. Shining brightly, reflected faint lights of various colors flashed across the corridor from time to time. I've already asked them to go for a walk, including Victoria. She has loved walking under the stars since she became a vampire. After all, she has said goodbye to her favorite sunshine and woods. Barnabas suddenly walked from behind Salomon. Emerging from the darkness, even now, he is still wearing the century-style costume and said, leaning on a cane, his waist is straight, and the white lace scarf is meticulous, "Aren't you really going to keep your promise, and are we transformed into humans, Mr. de Monet?" The Book of Vizender is indeed the perfect nemesis of that curse. Every black magic in that book has a corresponding white magic in Book of Vizender. Salomon froze all over, but he slowly relaxed, and he didn't look back. Even so, do you still think white magic won't harm you? That is to say. The vampire came out slowly. He raised his eyebrows and said, I will never be able to turn back into a human being? And the way to lift the curse in the Book of Weishandi is to kill vampire. Yes, magic against vampires. And what? And I never promised you that I would turn you into a human being. Salomon turned around slowly and looked at the vampire, still maintaining the spell in his hand. My original words were, this is the same as your second question is about, therefore, I have not violated my oath. Mr. Barnabas, your story is very touching, but it is meaningless. I just need the book. As for the third person in the town, vampires are also my hunting target. So, you wanted to kill me from the beginning, the vampire drew out. It doesn't matter what my story is, am I right? Yes. Salomon readily admitted, I'm afraid you still don't understand your specialness, Mr. Barnabas. You became a vampire by the magic curse of that book, rather than relying on birth. You were born with your own power. There is almost no upper limit to your strength. The last person who used that magic to become a vampire has been a long time ago. All I know is that it is an existence that cannot be killed at all. And vampires are like cancer, only one need exist to reproduce countless. Mr. Barnabas, your age is still too young for vampires, you have not accumulated much power, and you have not yet possessed the terrifying immortality sex. Speaking of which, do you think I will let you go? Of course, these are high-sounding words. In fact, the powder of vampire annihilation is also a treasured material. My existence is original sin. Barnabas kept hitting the ground with his cane, making a dull sound. Although Salomon couldn't see his expression clearly, he could feel the bitterness in his heart. With restlessness. He said. My existence is the original sin, and I have made Victoria responsible for it. We have been abandoned by God. Since His Holiness drove all the gods and demons out of the earth, human beings have been abandoned, and the development of civilization has not been participated by gods and devils. Salomon stepped forward, he touched the heel lightly, and the short boots, the complex spell structure disappeared in a flash. The young mystic walked forward slowly, and finally stopped at a suitable distance. Don't think about ascending to heaven, and don't think about going to hell to redeem your sins. Your soul has already been reserved by that horrible existence. If I can kill you, your soul can only belong to the god of black magic, just like Angelique Bouchard. Sithorn, the supreme mage, can say this name, but Salomon can't. He is not as powerful as the Venerable, and even mentioning his name may make him be noticed. Although after being watched, Sithorn could not affect the earth because of the existence of the supreme mage, but Salomon did not want to appear on the list of the gods of black magic. Including Victoria? Barnabas asked. No. Salomon said, if what you said is true, she was transformed after death. Although she cannot go to heaven, as long as she does not kill anyone, she will not go to hell. Her soul will go to death, that is the place of eternal silence. The vampire was silent for a long time, and the breeze blowing through the corridor from nowhere gently tugged at the hem of his clothes, seeming to urge Barnabas to make a quick decision. Salomon also quietly waited for Barnabas' decision, but no matter what, he would fight the vampire in front of him. I just came to the new world when I was your age. I didn't understand anything at that time, but my father often said to me, family is wealth. I have always regarded this sentence as a philosophy of life, because it is because of the efforts of the family members that the Corinthian family was able to gain a firm foothold in Europe and the New World and develop into a famous family. In England, the Corinthian family still holds titles, and in the New England region of Maine, they almost monopolize the fishing resources on the northeast coast. Barnabas opened his hands as he said that, as if he embraced all the great achievements made by the Corinthian family. He looked at Salomon and said in a very serious manner, we do this, just for the sake of the family. No matter what the result is, I want you to promise me that the Corinth family will not be implicated no matter what. I swear in the name of the suzerain Weiss Handy, the source of white magic. Salomon nodded. Very good, I finally saw where your faith lies. Barnabas nodded with satisfaction, but I still have a question. You can obviously find me during the day, why did you come at this time? Could it be that you? The expression of the young mystic was a little stiff. He has never fought, nor has he attempted to kill any intelligent beings. He admits that the story of Barnabas has influenced him. After all, who would not like a couple reunited after 200 years, who wouldn't want Romeo and Juliet to finally get married, who can't look forward to seeing the world full of beautiful things and sincere feelings, who would not envy the meeting of warm kisses and gorgeous roses? Too bad they're vampires. From the standpoint of Comitage, such creatures must be eliminated. As long as Salomon stays in Comitage for a day and obtains magic power from Vizendi for a day, he will always encounter such things. Even if he missed it this time, he would still meet again next time. Salomon had enjoyed the best magic education in the world, even in the universe, and this became his inescapable responsibility. It's just that Salomon was absolutely unwilling to admit that he wanted Barnabas to have an advantage, and he didn't even dare to admit that he was a little bit, just a little bit, looking forward to his own failure and retreating. Although those memories affect his personality all the time, making his heart become cold and hard, but after all, the time for Salomon to master some stigmata is still too short, and the soft personality cultivated in the previous life is still in a short time difficult to change. Perhaps the Supreme Master was aware of this and let Salomon complete this matter. For a young vampire like Barnabas, for any senior deacon of the temple, as long as he tried his best, he would definitely be able to kill him, even without the dispatch of the temple guardian. But Salomon's desireless look is too lazy, he always has to bear something. This is what the Venerable said to Modu, Salomon will bear something that does not belong to him, the least of the pains. This is one of the prices he has to pay for being strong. The vampire Barnabas is just a whetstone prepared by the supreme mage for Salomon. It's none of your business, Barnabas. Salomon's voice was as cold as his expression, and another semicircular magic circle unfolded in his hands, and the face of the mystic was in the flickering sparks. Bright and dark. No matter what Barnabas thinks, Salomon will choose to do this, giving up a little advantage just to express the extremely hypocritical guilt in his heart, just like a white glove before a duel. Let's end it as soon as possible, I don't want to wait any longer, he said. End of this chapter. Chapter 32 The First Battle with the Vampire. No matter how high a vampire's magical attainments are, one of the ways they think of when facing an enemy is to use their extraordinary speed and strength to crush their opponents, and Barnabas is no exception. He disappeared into the darkness in an instant, and rushed to Salomon with a cold wind all over his body. Immediately there was a dull sound, like the sizzling sound of red-hot metal being immersed in cold water. The vampire's sharp nails collided with the shield built by the mystic, and orange-red sparks burst out on Salomon's chest. The sparks instantly illuminated the dark corridor and then quickly extinguished. The short brightness allowed Salomon to see the vampire's pale face clearly. But before Salomon could react, the vampire's claw hit the shield again, sparks erupted again, and the mystic had to stagger back 2 steps. Salomon withdrew his right leg and stabilized his balance. He quickly raised the ring of ragator over his head, and sparks splashed out from the shield again. The wooden floors creaked horribly. The floor broke suddenly, revealing yellow and sharp sections and spikes, and one of Salomon's legs sank into the hollow floor. He suddenly rolled forward on the ground, dodging the claws that fell from the sky. Although he couldn't see all the movements of Barnabas in the dark, the reaction he developed after long-term training allowed him to withstand the swift and violent blows of the vampire. Although Barnabas was of a very high rank, he never without training, the attack direction is extremely easy to guess. Salomon didn't even look back, he threw back the ring of ragator in his hand, and then he stood up quickly, and then turned around immediately, with his toes slightly inward, his knees slightly bent, and his left palm on his chest front, right arm tilted down to the left in a defensive stance. But there was no one in front of him. The previous ring of ragator only shattered the decorative porcelain at the end of the corridor, and the vampire had long since disappeared. He secretly raised his vigilance, and at the same time quietly put his right hand into his pocket, took out a handful of dried carrots, stuffed them into his mouth as quickly as possible, chewed them hastily, and swallowed them. This was his mistake, but it has been made up for now. Now the darkness in front of him is no longer an obstacle for him. He no longer has to rely on anticipation to judge the direction of attack like a blind man. The magic of dark vision allows him to see everything within a range of nearly 20 meters in a dark environment. And there is a reason why he chose this spell instead of using an area of effect spell like Burning Hand to force out the vampire. The vampire is so fast that he can completely dodge that spell, and he only has one chance to cast the spell. When Salomon uttered the spell again, the vampire's claws might have already cut his throat. Not to mention that his mage level is not high now, and there are not many offensive spells that can be used. If it is other spells, even Weishandi's positive energy spells, they need to hit to discuss whether they can break the defense. Under such circumstances, with the vampire's reaction, Salomon did not have the confidence to hit Barnabas. Even if those spells could hit Barnabas, they probably wouldn't be able to cause him much damage. Therefore, it is the most cost-effective to choose some magic to bless yourself, and choose the same fighting style as other Karmatage mystics. Before the Toril crystal wall spells he learned had enough combat power, the magic of Visandi's spells combined with the transformation spells and conjuration spells to strengthen his melee ability were Salomon's main means of attack. A few seconds after casting the spell, Salomon heard the rapid flapping of wings and the sound of fine and dense footsteps in the corridor, as if a large group of creatures were approaching him. He turned again, only this time he only made a half-turn, knocking an arm out of the darkness with his right elbow. He took a half-step forward with his right foot and followed behind Barnabas' right foot, clasped the elbow of this arm with the palm of his left hand, and poked the fingers of his right hand obliquely towards the vampire's eyes. Wing Chun, by his eye. Turning around is just to lure the enemy to attack. This is what Salomon learned when he watched Karmatage's apprentice practice Bagwazang. In the self-defense class, he faced all kinds of boxing techniques, and naturally learned a lot about how to deal with the enemy. Experience of. But he doesn't have the immortality of a vampire. In such an environment where he may be attacked at any time, in order not to be scratched, short combat is the best choice. Life and death is not training. Salomon did not keep his hand at all, and his hand was very fast. But his opponent was not an ordinary human, but an extremely fast vampire. This move was easily dodged by Barnabas, only passing through the vampire's ear. The vampire opened its mouth and bit Salomon's palm, and the mystic clenched his fist with his right hand, and the semicircular ragator ring suddenly lit up, blocking the vampire's fangs. Salomon let go of his left hand, and took a half-step forward with his left leg. His body bypassed the sharp claws swung by Barnabas, and then he swung his right hand outward forcefully, slapping the vampire hard. Face. In response, Barnabas flew across the sky and slammed into the glass window of the corridor. Before the vampire broke out of the window, Salomon was surrounded by a silver mist. He disappeared in the same place in an instant, and suddenly appeared above the flight path of the vampire. The mystic stepped on the magic disc that appeared out of thin air, and then punched down again to slap the ring of Ragator down. Boom! The mystic slammed the vampire onto the ground, and the dark wooden floor made a loud noise, and it sank suddenly, splashing a large cloud of sawdust. The second ring conjuration system, the lost step. Before the vampire could recover from the violent impact, the orange rings around Salomon's hands were completely unfolded. He clenched his hands into fists and struck down Barnabas' face in turns at a very fast speed. Hard blows would slam the vampire's head hard against the floor. Boom 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 boom. It sounded like the rapid drumbeat of a festival in the corridor, but there were no beautiful girls in bathrobes, noisy tourists, and children bumping around here and there. There were only two creatures standing in the dark corridor, one standing, with a ferocious face, one is lying down, life or death unknown. In addition to this, there is blood continuously splashed on the broken ground and broken teeth spattering. Hey, hey! Salomon took half a step back, panting violently, like a rescued drowning person. His chest heaved rapidly, his blood-stained hands were hanging beside him, and even the 3 rings of Emperor Weixin were covered in blood. Now all he felt was a soreness in his arms. The series of actions from turning around to lure the enemy were completed in one breath. Even in Kamitage's self-defense class, he had never engaged in such intense hand-to-hand combat. Then he swung nearly 50 punches at a speed that broke through the limit and was invisible to the naked eye. Lactic acid filled almost every inch of muscle in his arm. In fact, he doesn't have to do this at all, the shield he got from Athena can be used at will, and now, he just wants to test the level of his ability. Now he has come to the result, as long as he uses all his strength, he can completely deal with a young primitive vampire. After panting for a few seconds, he barely raised his arms, and once again formed his hands into palms, slowly opening them like flowers. Afterwards, the wooden floor was like a shattered mirror, and there was a sound like glass breaking under Barnabas. Salomon is not the supreme mage, it only takes a moment for the venerable to expand the mirror dimension, and Salomon still needs to chant spells and gestures, so he needs to subdue the vampire before he can lock Barnabas in. As the cracks on the mirror became bigger and bigger, the unconscious vampire also sank slowly. But before he could completely lock the vampire into the mirror dimension, the sound of flapping wings and dense footsteps sounded again. Salomon looked up, and a large group of rats and bats rushed over from the other end of the corridor. These disgusting little creatures almost flooded the corridor, and in an instant they flooded the corridor like sea waves and rushed to Salomon's feet. Salomon had to give up his action and take a few steps back. Thin flames erupted from between his palms, scorching the rats and bats in front of him. The flame also ignited all the curtains in front of Salomon, and the firelight swept away all the darkness. But these creatures did not attack Salomon, they flowed through the corridor like a stream of water, and the mystic was like an island on the water, and the bats and mice all bypassed him. After these little things completely disappeared from the end of the corridor, Salomon looked over and found that Barnabas lying on the ground had disappeared. Instead, a woman in a retro light blue dress stood there. The whalebone bustle made her skirt look quite wide, and the skirt was decorated with complicated lace. In the firelight all over the corridor, Salomon could see her face clearly, and behind her was floating a ghost that looked exactly like her. End of this chapter. Chapter 33 The First Battle with the Vampire. Salomon carefully observed the woman standing in front of him. With excellent eyesight, he saw that her eye sockets were slightly red, and her eyelids with dense blood vessels were a deep black, like coagulated blood. The palms crossed in front of her lower abdomen had spiked black nails. Even the orange-red flames could not dye her skin color into other colors, and her pale cheeks made her red lips look extremely gorgeous. And the ghost floating behind her not only looks exactly like her, but even wears the same clothes as her. Even if he had never met her before, Salomon could roughly guess her identity. In the stories told by Barnabas, she was mentioned in many pages. This woman was Victoria, who was killed by Angelique and then transformed into a vampire by Barnabas, and that ghost must be Josette. Even though these two women are dead, their appearance has not diminished in the slightest. No wonder Barnabas has never forgotten Josette in the time of 200 years. Victoria was looking at Salomon with extremely cold eyes. What kind of hatred and anger were in those eyes? The anger towards the murderer, the usually suppressed hatred for the living, and the desire for warm blood were all projected onto Salomon. It only takes 4 seconds to suck his blood dry. If Salomon hadn't been a mystic, such a gaze would have made him terrified. No ordinary person would not feel afraid in the face of a creature that could easily break human bones, especially this creature that drank blood. Victoria's hatred was not without reason. When she saw Salomon punching Barnabas in the face, her heart was about to break, and so was Josette beside her. In this way. So she chose to use the ability she found out to take Barnabas away, and then appeared in front of Salomon alone. She wants revenge, and so does Josette. Angelique Bouchard, who cursed Barnabas to become a vampire, is dead. Now the boy in front of him must die too. No one can live after hurting someone from the Collins family. The flames climbed to the ceiling along the woolen curtains, scorching the wooden ceiling. And the corridor was filled with the smell of burnt protein and the mellow aroma of slightly carbonized teak wood. But Victoria didn't show any panic, and she didn't have any thoughts of talking. Instead, she squatted down and picked up the cane that Barnabas left on the ground. She held the tip of the staff firmly, as if holding a short stick, and pointed the brass staff obliquely at the ground. Although she didn't want to speak, Salomon did. "I was going to find you after I killed him," he said, "and I will send him back to where he should be, and your soul will sleep in the place of eternal silence, but I found that I have one more target to send away." While Salomon was speaking, the movement of his hands did not stop. He took out a small piece of boiled leather and a small glass bottle filled with silver powder, and cast targeted protection spells on himself. The mage armor can provide a layer of protection when his muscles are sore, and the protection against good and evil is to face the possession of ghosts and fear magic. All the magic that Salomon has cast so far has been extremely specific. Coupled with the blessing of the stigmata, as long as he can hit vampires and ghosts, he can bring them enough damage. The magic wrapped around his fist comes from Weiss Handy, and the positive energy is like poison and strong acid to all undead. But Victoria didn't want to talk to her at all. All of a sudden, she rushed towards Salomon. The long skirt with the whalebone bustle could not hinder her movement at all, and the ghost behind her followed closely, and rushed towards the mystic with teeth and claws. The vampire and ghost moved extremely fast. If Salomon hadn't controlled part of the stigmata now, he couldn't see their movements clearly, especially the ghost that kept blinking. This is the characteristic of ghosts, they can freely shuttle between the etheric plane and the real plane. Any inexperienced person may be attacked by ghosts. Salomon nimbly dodged the ghost's seemingly harmless caress, and Victoria's cane swiped one after another. Salomon stretched out a hand, and quickly approached the head of the brass rod to hit the protective mark he had drawn out of thin air, making the sound of glass being shattered. Another violent blow followed, but it still couldn't break the seal's protection for Salomon. Victoria didn't give up. She raised her cane high and tried to swing it down with all her strength. Salomon took half a step forward with his left leg, narrowly avoiding Josette's claw attack. He crossed his wrists in front of him, holding Victoria's arm, then flipped his left hand, supported the cold wrist with his thumb, took a quick step forward with his right foot, bent his knee into an arch, bent his right arm, and put the tip of his elbow on his body. Driven by it, it slammed into the vampire's chest from bottom to top. Bang! Their creaking footsteps were instantly overshadowed by the explosion, and Victoria was like a cannonball, hitting 3 rooms away at a speed that was almost invisible to the naked eye. On the wall at the end, she smashed the wooden wall and crashed into the middle of the room. Salomon could even hear Victoria knocking over the furniture. Bajiquin, elbow to the heart. This move not only allowed Salomon to block the heavy cane, but also knocked Victoria out, preventing the vampire's fangs from touching him, and the brass cane disappeared into the dark room along with Victoria. Salomon wasn't worried that Victoria would be able to run out immediately. Even a vampire had to abide by ergonomics. Whether it was a spinal or rib injury, Victoria would definitely be unable to move for the time being. Suddenly, a terrifying face suddenly appeared in front of Salomon. That face had skin that barely adhered to the rotten muscle and crooked and fallen teeth. Maggots wriggled wantonly under the skin. Half-rotten eyeballs protruded from the eye sockets, and yellow pus flowed out. The sparse dark long hair couldn't cover it at all. Cracked scalp and blackened brain underneath. There was even a worm happily emerging from the brain, raised its head and greeted Salomon. But a surge of power from the heart forcibly calmed the fear in his heart. Salomon clenched his fist with his left hand, and the orange-red rings unfolded layer by layer. Hit the ghost in the face. Before Salomon and the ghost separated again, the sound of hurried rodent footsteps and bats flapping their wings at high speed sounded again from another direction in the corridor. He stood there and chanted the spell, and a gust of wind rushed to the other end of the corridor. The gust of wind blocked the footsteps of mice and bats, blowing these small animals to the ground. While they were squeaking, Salomon jumped back suddenly and crashed into the space like a broken mirror behind him. Josette also rushed in, and then, the shattered mirror disappeared into the corridor. The fire gradually grew stronger, and the tongues of flame spread along the dry ceiling. The burning wooden ceiling fell to the ground, splashing a large area of red-hot sparks, and thick smoke drilled in and out from every gap. Through the gap between the windows, with a little firelight rushing into the dark sky. In the open space in the garden in front of Colin Manor, a circle of sparks appeared out of thin air. These sparks connected into a circle, and Salomon walked out of it. Josette was left in the mirror dimension by him, and he planned to solve the ghost in the end. What he had to do now was to find Barnabas and kill him. Only this vampire was his first target. The hunt will continue tonight. End of this chapter. Chapter 35 Family is the real wealth. The top floor of the huge villa standing in the night was lit with fire, and the sparks fluttered into the night sky along the evening wind. Salomon stood in the stone-paved garden, looking up at the burning manor. Behind him, there were black bushes with twisted and grotesque branches. Even the flames could not illuminate the deepest darkness. The negative energy that maintained the activities of Barnabas and Victoria had already begun to erode the land in the manor, and it was for this reason that the temperature in Colin Manor was slightly lower than other places. Living people who stay here will be slowly eroded by negative energy and become old and sick. Although Willie was already an alcoholic, the low temperature made him drink more and more. Salomon saw Willie, who was drunk, open the door and ran out of the hall in a panic. The old servant called the police after discovering the manor was on fire, and Salomon clearly heard his conversation with the fire brigade. But he didn't come out of the shadows to stop this behavior, but stood in the shadows that no one could find and continued to stare at the top floor of the manor, waiting for the appearance of the vampire. But this kind of movement can't be hidden from many people. Even though Colin Manor is surrounded by private land, the rapidly spreading flames and the flames that dyed the sky have attracted the attention of many people in the town. Salomon didn't wait long before he saw a car rushing into the garden. The living members of the Corinthian family jumped out of the car anxiously before the car stopped. After seeing the old servant Willie, they hurriedly tugged at him, wanting to ask about the situation. In fact, when Victoria, who was walking and chatting with them, suddenly turned into a bat and flew towards the manor, Elizabeth felt that something was wrong, and she felt that what she was most worried about had happened. The most decisive woman in the Collins family immediately asked Caroline to drive back to the Colin Manor, but before they could pass through the gate, they saw the flames soaring into the sky. The drunk old Willie couldn't say much at all. No matter how Caroline patted his head or how Elizabeth asked, Willie only said that he heard a few noises when he was fainted, and he didn't wait for him to check. Thick smoke filled the corridor, and it was only when he ran out of the manor to check that it was on fire. "It's the wizard," Caroline said angrily, a low grunt coming from her throat, and she sniffed, trying to smell something. Elizabeth's face was cold and hard to see her emotions, but her waist was straight, as if the shrewd and capable head of the Corinthian family 31 years ago had returned. Back then, after Angelique came to the door, Elizabeth once imagined whether the Collins family would encounter such a situation one day, so she made preparations within her power. Elizabeth handed a key to David, who was standing aside, and she said, "Son, follow Willie and go to the armory to get some guns. But that thing is useless to wizards." Caroline's face slowly grew thick hair, and her toned legs became more robust, with deformed joints, like the hind legs of a canine creature, and her height also much higher than before. At the same time, her upper and lower jaw bones gradually elongated, her teeth became sharper, her originally beautiful nose bulged and became ugly, her voice became deep and hoarse, and there was a threatening growl when she spoke. But the living members of the Collins family were not surprised by this change of Caroline. On the contrary, they took it for granted that Caroline was a werewolf. Angelique Bouchard continued her hatred of Barnabas to Corinth. The family not only wanted to embarrass the Collins family in business, but also wanted to pollute the blood of the Collins family, so Angelique ordered a werewolf to bite Caroline when she was a child. This secret was not revealed until 31 years ago, when Angelique and Barnabas fought in Colin Manor. "The wizard must still be inside," Caroline said. "Now, let's go in and kill him. Wait for David to get the gun." Elizabeth did not rush into the villa recklessly to attack the wizard who might still be there. She said, "With the gun, at least we can help. Believe Barnabas and Victoria, they are not that easy to deal with. At least we need to let that wizard know that the Corinthians are not easy to mess with." A swarm of bats shattered the windows on the top floor of the manor, and the broken glass fell to the flagstone floor. Elizabeth and Caroline raised their heads. They saw the bats circling for a moment near the burning roof. then swooped down on a dark corner of the garden. "He's there!" Caroline yelled and rushed in that direction. At this time, David and Willie just rushed back, and Elizabeth took the shotgun in David's hand and skillfully stuffed the bullet into it. This is an old gun, the Winchester M1917 trench gun, but old does not mean that it is not easy to use. This gun was not discontinued until 1945. It has been supplied to the military before, and it is still used in SWAT until now. After Elizabeth loaded the shotgun, she helped David load his M1911 pistol. "You have to learn to fight," Elizabeth said to David while loading the bullet. "I'm old, and you are the only normal person left in the Collins family. Caroline is a werewolf, which is why she has never married. The family still needs you to continue. Be brave, David, whether we can survive today or not, you have to fight. Remember, David, remember, family is real wealth." Salomon stretched out his hand and clenched his fist, using the ring of radiator to block the swarm of bats. His arm felt the impact of the waves. He unhurriedly stretched out his fingers, and the ghostly sharp blade swept across his body, cutting several bats in half. But this couldn't stop the other bats. When those bats swooped down from the night sky again, he spread his palm again, and the deafening thunder suddenly sounded. Even Elizabeth and David, who were 30 meters away, heard it. The lightning that appeared out of nowhere around him hit every bat, and it fell from the air with the scorching smell of burnt fur and squeaking screams. Immediately afterwards, Caroline rushed over while stepping on the stone slab. Salomon blocked the werewolf's sharp claws with his shield, then stepped forward and punched, hitting the werewolf hard in the abdomen, knocking the werewolf back into the garden with a whimpering sound. In the next instant, countless sparks erupted from the shield in front of him, and a large number of small steel balls with unparalleled kinetic energy hit the ring of radiator, flipping Salomon to the grass. Before he could hide his body behind the shield again, there was another gunshot, and a few sporadic small steel balls passed through Salomon's calf. The severe pain instantly blinded Salomon's brain, and he could no longer maintain the spell in his hand, and the ring of radiator flashed a few times before going out. He felt that his legs were extremely heavy, as if they were being burned by flames, and blood was constantly pouring out from between the damaged flesh. But that was nothing compared to the pain he felt when he put the ring on. Salomon took a deep breath and forced himself to stabilize his emotions. He turned over, with countless grass clippings all over his body, and barely got up from the blood-soaked grass. There was a white light in his hand, and he pressed it lightly on his calf. Contract Warlock, Sovereign of Heaven, 1 ring, heals injuries. Elizabeth held the shotgun, she pulled the bolt, strode over, pointed the gun at Salomon who was kneeling on the grass. Victoria appeared behind Elizabeth with a group of bats. She looked at Salomon bitterly and said, "You are doomed, no one can save you." End of this chapter. Chapter 36. 2 Difficulties. Salomon's wound gradually healed under the dim white light. Positive energy had an excellent effect on the trauma. Within a few seconds, his wound stopped bleeding. And new flesh and blood gradually grew out to form brand new muscles and skin. I'm afraid I won't be able to keep the agreement, Mr. Barnabas." Salomon ignored Elizabeth's muzzle and Victoria's threats. He kept kneeling and said to himself, "Unless we let they leave, I can spare them. Aren't you coming out, Mr. Vampire?" His trump card has been well hidden, and he has not played it until now, so he also has the confidence to threaten the vampire. That was the winner that could be decided quickly, but because the damage range was too large, he really didn't want to implicate the living people of the Corinth family. They were just helping his own family, and Salomon could fully understand their thoughts. In their circumstances, he might have gone too far, and Elizabeth has refrained from simply pointing a gun at him instead of shooting him in the head immediately. Elizabeth was able to hit him before because of a sneak attack. Now that she has stood in the open, Salomon is sure that even if he does not use defensive spells, he will not be hit again. "Shut up!" Hearing Salomon's threat, Victoria was furious. "You hurt him so badly." "Okay, I see." Salomon opened his eyes and uttered a syllable. The next moment, he was surrounded by silver mist again. Bang! Elizabeth shot immediately, but it only splashed a large amount of soil and grass clippings, and Salomon had long since disappeared. "Where is he?" Caroline yelled. Victoria and Elizabeth looked around nervously, while David held his pistol in both hands, pointing at the dark bushes. That place really frightened him. It felt like something would jump out of there. He was now glad that he had let Willie leave the manor first, and went to the gate to meet the fire brigade. A drunken old man is really not suitable to appear in such a dangerous situation, and no one is stupid enough to let him take a gun. After a while, just when they thought Salomon had left, a circle of orange-red sparks appeared out of thin air on the grey stone road behind them, and Salomon walked out of the circle. Perhaps the intuition of those with a delicate heart will be a little more accurate. David's intuition is not wrong. Salomon was indeed in the bush before. He opened a portal there and took out an object. At this time, the object was he holds it in his hand. It was a round copper shield that was slightly golden. The surface of the copper casting vaguely had patterns like snake scales. On this round shield, there was a rhombus pattern on the top, bottom, left, and right sides. In the center of the shield was a copper-cast woman. The head, the snake hair growing from the head with an extremely painful expression extends around the shield. Elizabeth fired without hesitation, and the metal balls scattered rapidly, but they were all blocked by the shield raised in front of Salomon. The deformed bullets flew around with sparks, and did not make any dents on the copper shield. She fired again, with the same result. Not even the kinetic energy of the shot could make Salomon take a step back. This is Aegis, Alpha Iota Gamma, the shield of Aegis, the shield of sheepskin, and the shield of Medusa. No matter what alias this shield has or what legends it has, its most powerful lies in Namaduz Shah's head, since it was cut off by Perseus and inlaid on the shield by Athena. This shield has extremely powerful power, and anyone who sees this shield will turn into a fossil. Salomon snapped his fingers, and 4 bright white balls of light surrounded the shield. He lowered his head and silently recited the spell Athena taught him. Where he couldn't see, the Medusa's head with a painful expression suddenly opened its closed eyes, and those eyes turned around as if they were still fresh flesh and blood. Fa also broke free from the shackles of the copper shield, flaunted it wantonly, and spit out venom. He heard screams and voices calling names, Victoria calling for Barnabas, Elizabeth calling for Caroline, and Caroline calling for David. All kinds of voices intertwined. But soon, the shouting stopped. But Salomon still lowered his head unmoved, and after a while, he put down the shield. 4 extremely exquisite stone statues stood in the dark night, with vivid horror and disbelief on their faces. Victoria tried to jump on Salomon, Elizabeth stood in front of her daughter Caroline, who pushed David aside to keep him away. But no matter what they do, as long as they see Medusa's head on the shield, they will be irreversibly petrified, including their clothes and even guns, all within the scope of petrification. This is an almost irreversible process. This is different from petrification. Even with the spell of dispelling magic, it is difficult to relieve their state. Unless the Supreme Mage or Athena casts the spell, they will always be stone statues. This is not so much petrification as it is a curse. When Salomon took out the shield, he still hesitated for a while. The Corinthian family didn't make a mistake, they just wanted to protect their own family members. Is it really appropriate to do so? But in the end he still made up his mind and raised his shield in front of the Collins family, because they were the ones standing in front of his target now. It's hard to say that Salomon's thoughts were not affected by the memories in the stigmata. While accepting the memories, those cold thoughts also affected and changed him all the time, prompting him to decide something, pulling him from the greenhouse to the on the bloody battlefield. For example, now, when he was attacked by other members of the Collins family, he abandoned the idea of not implicating them. As long as they blocked his way to his goal, he would also adopt a hostile attitude. In the past, His Holiness had told him that there was a price to pay for taking this path. At that time, he thought that these costs could be avoided by using spellcasting materials, but now he understood that the so-called costs did not refer to material things, just like the old wizard who saved the girl mentioned by His Holiness, he used life to save lives. This is still the most simple and rude price. As the object of His Holiness's key education, Salomon will have to give up more things. So, what is the price I pay? Salomon thought, conscience, or empathy. When he wanted to explain it to himself, he found that no matter how he explained it, it was extremely feeble. You know, his behavior can be interpreted in some circumstances as a magician fighting an evil vampire. After all, Barnabas did kill innocent people just for blood, and the Collins family was the ones who helped them. But when he said this, he didn't believe it himself. Vampires should indeed be punished, this was his attitude from the standpoint of Karmatage, but the rest of the Collins family were innocent. David, for example, is still a big, shy kid. This is a classic moral dilemma. Salomon used to be able to hold his mobile phone and stand on the dry shore to point, but when he was really faced with this situation, Salomon found that this is probably the most difficult thing in the world, because no matter what he chooses is wrong. To eliminate the vampires, he had to attack the Collins family. Giving up on the elimination of vampires was against his position. But now that the decision has been made, there is no room for regret. Now, he just wanted to hear His Holiness' opinion on this matter. The Supreme Mage who has lived for thousands of years has definitely encountered this kind of thing more than once. She must be able to give a perfect answer and definitely solve his doubts. You did this. A cold voice sounded beside Salomon. Are they dead? Salomon quickly put aside his messy thoughts and turned to the source of the voice. Yes. He nodded expressionlessly. I did it all. Why? The vampire, who was trying to maintain his tone at all times, finally couldn't control his anger. Only part of Barnabas's face recovered, his cheeks were still bloody, and there were some scorched marks in the cold flesh and blood. Salomon's fist with positive energy had caused him great damage before. It even burned Barnabas' eyeballs to death. Before that, Barnabas almost lost consciousness. He didn't manage to escape from the house that hadn't been affected by the fire until his eyeballs fully regenerated and he heard Victoria's shouts, and appeared here. Salomon did not answer. But after a few deep breaths, the vampire regained his composure. Everything I did was for the Collinses, but you destroyed it, said the vampire, opening his arms, and now you may destroy me. Lift up your shield. Make it your deed. Hang this medal on your chest. I will laugh at you, Salomon, you. Never. Never. Don't. Think. Forget. Remember. Faithless. When the firemen followed Old Willie into the manor, there was nothing left but the burning villa. This chapter is mainly worried about the inconsistency with the reader's 3 views. But it doesn't matter, you wait for my explanation in chapter 2. End of this chapter. Chapter 37 The Necessary Sacrifice. There are 5 lifelike statues on the training square of the Karmitage headquarters. The mystic apprentices who are training in the body protection class are not surprised by the appearance of these statues, and they don't even know who put them there. It's just that they also feel that the expressions of these statues are a little too vivid, as if they are made of flesh and blood, which makes people shudder. Some apprentices also tried to poke the thin coat corners of the statues, but Baron Mordo grabbed them back. There was no trace of joy on Moto's face. He knew what his junior brother was facing, and Salomon had already made a corresponding decision, and the result of this decision was right in front of him. This made him a little worried, and he even complained about the arrangement of the Supreme Mage. After all, his junior is an out-and-out cave creature, and he has rarely left Karmitage. He is worried that Salomon will face such a thing too early, because he is too young. Salomon, who moved the statue to Karmitage, was sitting in front of the Supreme Master at this time. He drank the tea on the Supreme Master's table, and his sluggish spirit revived. He told His Holiness everything he had seen and heard during the trip, including the moral dilemma he faced. Now, he desperately wishes he could get some useful advice. You live in such a peaceful environment as Karmitage, so naturally you did not choose to do so. But when you leave here, when you go out, all kinds of problems will follow one after another, and what you faced before is just one of them. His Holiness pointed to the direction of the training ground, but I am very satisfied with your decision, son. I know you have doubts in your heart, so I will give you an example, which is what I have experienced, and it will help you. Dormammu didn't spy on the earth until now. He wanted to swallow the earth into the dark dimension since the rise of human beings, but was blocked by the first Supreme Mage, Agamotto. Later, I also became the Supreme Mage, does the same job. In the past, there were countless people who believed in Dormammu. There was once a small village where almost everyone believed in Dormammu, just like believing in God, pious and ignorant. They didn't know that they believed in an evil god, but their lives did become better. They could raise livestock, and the food was harvested year after year, and no one died of starvation anymore. Soon after, they held a banquet in the local area, and used the surplus grain of the year to attract many merchants and villagers from other nearby villages. At that time, the planetary defense system was initially established, and they were still very easy to use the magic bestowed by Dormammu to summon him, and I also noticed this through the planetary defense system. Just when Dormammu was about to succeed in summoning, I appeared there. The Supreme Mage paused, and she asked Salomon, "What do you think I will do?" Salomon shook his head. If he was in such a scene, he really didn't know what to do. People who believe in Dormammu are guilty, even if they don't know what they believe in. But what about the villagers from other villages and the passing merchants? The answer is simple. When Dormammu was about to come, I summoned a burning meteorite, which fell from the sky and killed everyone present. His Holiness said, this includes not only Dormammu's followers, it also includes nearby villagers and merchants. Do you know why I did this? Salomon shook his head again. I don't know. Because I can't tell who is a believer of Dormammu and who is not. But Dormammu will come soon. If I wait until I identify the innocent one by one, the earth will have been swallowed into the dark dimension. The easiest, quickest, and most effective way is to kill everyone present and interrupt the summoning ceremony. As you have encountered, you have to kill the vampire, but ordinary people are protecting him. If you insist on doing this, then you must hurt those ordinary people. His Holiness' tone was very serious, she said, but you have no choice, Salomon. No one can guarantee that the two vampires will not treat human beings as food because of their thirst for blood in the future. You can't put the lives of other people in that small town on the conscience of the vampires. That is extremely irresponsible. We are protecting humanity as a whole, not individuals. I think you should also know the rank of Barnabas. No more Dracula is allowed to appear on the earth, otherwise it will be a disaster for mankind, and under the measure of the safety of all mankind, some lives can be given up. This principle is understood by every mystic mage in Carmitage. Although it is very cold-blooded and ruthless, it is still the correct choice. The planetary defense system has long been established, and Carmitage has been able to monitor the magic fluctuations in the world. We are often able to stop the spread of the situation when the believers of Dormammu or the believers of the devil or something else just starts to call. But even so, we must face this kind of problem from time to time. Salomon lowered his head to think about what the Supreme Sorcerer had said. From the standpoint of the Supreme Mage, Carmitage, and even the standpoint of protecting all human beings, this method is indeed advisable. If those terrible existences are summoned, more people will die. The Supreme Mage is also very satisfied to see that Salomon is thinking. Nowadays, many people in Carmitage are blindly respecting His Holiness' decision, but His Holiness still hopes that the mystics can have their own thoughts. She very much hopes that Salomon Meng can understand her good intentions in doing so. His Holiness continued, Carmitage's doing this does not mean that we ignore life. If possible, we will choose to save them as much as possible. Otherwise, we will become typical utilitarians who simply measure life by quantity. This is not advisable. We know that the value of life is immeasurable, but we have to destroy a few for the sake of many lives. Value life and decide everything carefully, especially when you are determined to give up others' time of life and soul. In fact, all the enemies Salomon faced this time were within His Holiness' prediction, including ordinary people from the Corinthian family. This mission was also arranged by the Venerable himself, in order for Salomon to face this choice in advance and make the decision himself. Only in this way can Salomon abandon unnecessary weakness, have a decisive attitude, and finally grow into a qualified guardian according to the vision of His Holiness. However, this choice is painful, isn't it? Salomon raised his head. Have you still carried such a burden, and it lasted for such a long time? This is our duty. While protecting human beings, we are also bearing the sins of human beings. The Venerable's expression did not change. As long as we are still protecting human beings, such things will happen. Even without Kamatai-ji, without the Supreme Mage, someone would have made such a decision. This is a sacrifice that has to be made, and this is the price you will have to pay. Cherish the sympathy and kindness you have now, they are precious, keep them. Only in this way can you stop ignoring the value of life when making decisions. Only in this way can you make better use of these lives. When necessary, and your own too. Sorry, Salomon, this is not your pain, it's mine. The Supreme Mage closed her eyes in pain, but soon, she opened them again, and there was no longer any hesitation in her eyes. Hint, this is lawful good. End of this chapter. Chapter 38 Closing Work. The Ancient One is the King of the Courtyard, the King of Midgard, and the King of the Earth. This is the title that the Venerable fought hard with the magic in his hands, and it is recognized by most people in the universe. Therefore, His Holiness will love human beings as much as he loves his own people, and will treat every life in his hands with caution. The Venerable also asked Salomon in the same way. To love human beings, to examine the necessity of every sacrifice, and to prevent meaningless waste of life. In His Holiness' view, the Collins family was an acceptable sacrifice. While it is not a crime to hide a vampire, it is a crime to stand up to an occult who comes to strangle a vampire. This is the law made by the Supreme Mage as a king for this world. Although ordinary people do not know the existence of Carmitage, they still need to abide by the law of Carmitage. As for the pain of the choice behind this, His Holiness believes that he should bear it, and the future Salomon will also bear it. Salomon quickly accepted this statement, after all when the Corinthian family attacked him in order to protect his family. Although he hesitated, he still decided to take out Aegis. He wasn't a sympathetic guy, he just had some empathy, otherwise the peaceful life in his previous life would have made it difficult for him to harden his heart to kill someone, but he did it anyway. Now that he has made a decision, there is no room for him to regret it. It's just that he still needs some finishing work to do. After resting for a day, he will return to Colin Town again to completely eliminate the vampires and werewolves there. After all, both vampires and werewolves can reproduce through ordinary people, just like cancer cells hidden in human society. These creatures hidden in the gutter have always been one of the targets of Kamatage's elimination. Cleaning up the town of Colin was a task entrusted to him by the Supreme Mage. His Holiness thinks that the process of searching for the Dark Book of God need not be so urgent. After all, the book Salomon found was written by an Italian alchemist in the Middle Ages. Was transferred into hiding. If the Dark Divine Book was read by someone at this time, there would be a big mess, and Kamatage's planetary defense system could not fail to check it. The Venerable was also not worried about the danger that Colin Town would bring to Salomon, so she asked Salomon to go to the town to take a break and hunt down some werewolves and vampires as practical training. But the Collins family did not provide information about other vampires in the town, so Salomon had to start looking from scratch, but this also gave him some time to practice his magic, and fighting on the training ground would not make progress. In the next month, apart from going to Athena for daily study, Salomon would bring some seafood back to Karmitage every day except salmon and tuna, especially Boston lobster, a specialty of Maine. Most. Salomon only needs to open a portal directly to the bottom of the sea. With the pressure of seawater, those seafood will rush out along the portal, even for lobsters hidden deep in the cave. After closing the portal, he only needs to it is enough to pick up the seafood from the ground. During this period of time, the apprentices of Karmitage's mystics were very grateful for the food brought back by Salomon. After all, His Holiness asked the apprentices to abandon their desires and soothe their souls. Therefore, there is only water and cabbage in the cafeteria of the headquarters, and they have to go to Hong Kong St. Only eat in the palace. Now, every night, there are fresh seafood to eat in the Karmitage headquarters, and His Holiness also turns a blind eye. In fact, there are only clear water cabbage in the headquarters. 100 years have passed. And it has become a tradition inexplicably. His Holiness does not know whether it is good or bad, so he can only let it go. In addition to sending seafood to Karmitage, Salomon also sent some to the boxing gym where he learned Wing Chun and Athena. You've done a good job. After hearing Salomon's explanation of the previous leave, Athena's dissatisfaction disappeared. In her opinion, young heroes should show their talents and kill 1 or 2 monsters, so that bards can sing about their great achievements in the future. As for the ordinary people of the Corinthian family, Athena didn't care. What she cares about is that Salomon also used the aegis she gave her, which makes Athena very satisfied. What does this mean? This shows that Salomon is a hero trained by Athena. She would be more satisfied if Salomon could appear in front of the crowd riding Pegasus. Satisfied with the eccentricity, Athena specially fried a portion of Atlantic salmon for Salomon. This kind of fatty fish can be fried after removing the bones, marinating, and seasoning. Salomon can often eat several pieces until eat yourself up. Because Athena's culinary skills are much better than those degraded chefs in the Karmitage headquarters, Salomon will go to Athena's for lunch during the period of hunting vampires and werewolves in Colin Town. Every day at noon, Athena will prepare several teriyaki salmon, beet salmon fillets and grilled lobster to supplement the calories for the huge consumption of Salomon. In fact, the affairs in Colin Town were not complicated, but extremely time-consuming. The third vampire in the town is actually Julia Hoffman, the family doctor of the Collins family. This person has disappeared in 31 years, and this is also recorded in the local police files. Although Salomon didn't know how she was transformed into a vampire by Barnabas, after ambush for a while, Salomon used the hair she left at the crime scene, which was actually found by magic, to cast vampire. The second-level prophecy spell of hunting mark easily grabbed her by the tail and chopped off the young vampire's head extremely smoothly, leaving it in the sun to burn into ashes. Even more troublesome are the werewolves. Although the powers of werewolves and vampires are related to the Dark Book of God, compared to the troublesome first embrace of vampires, the method for werewolves to add companions is too simple. All it takes is a small sip, and the lycanthropy curse in their saliva enters the body. As long as they can eat one less person in their never-ending rampage, their group will grow by 1 point. Salomon didn't know how these werewolves came from, nor did he know how many werewolves there were. These werewolves have normal identities in Colin Town. They are not afraid of the sun like vampires, so they can move around the town normally. After the death of Angelique Bouchard, these werewolves scattered all over the town, which took Salomon a long time to scout around, and spent a lot of honey and lotus ointment to cast the second ring spell Recognize Camouflage to identify those werewolves in human form. Salomon also contacted the dark-skinned, talkative driver who drove him to Colin Manor and took him to follow the werewolves and recorded their addresses. Salomon will wait for himself to rest completely and be able to cast all spells, then return to Colin Town and hunt and kill these werewolves when they are alone. Hey, brother! I found out that the person you asked me to follow died within a few days. The driver said while counting the money. What on earth do you do? I'm an agent, from SHIELD. Those people are drug dealers. Salomon held out his hand, and there was a black ID in his hand, but he took it back before the driver could touch it. After all, this is just an illusion trick, and it will be revealed at the slightest touch. Are you kidding me? The driver's eyes widened. He almost turned around and ran away in fright, but he expressed his doubts after he came back to his senses. He seriously looked at Salomon, who was writing and drawing in his notebook, and said in a very ridiculous tone, "You must be kidding me. You don't look as old as my son." Because I was too smart, I went directly to the SHIELD Academy. Salomon sighed pretendingly, I can't play games, read comics, or even use my mobile phone at will. Such a life is really uncomfortable. That's why I applied for this task. Remember, you haven't seen me, and you can't mention me to anyone, and there is a driving recorder. Why doesn't your broken car have a driving recorder? Understood, understood, I understand. The driver made an okay gesture. Now, go buy me a bottle of Coke, iced ones, not Pepsi. End of this chapter. Chapter 39 come to an end. P.S. This chapter is not suitable for the Small Animal Protection Association, the Holy Mother, the Generosity of Others, One-Sided Martial Arts, Twilight Mary Soul Lovers and those who are not good at using brains. This list will be extended, depending on how stupid human beings can be. Degree. Salomon poked his head out of the car to make sure that the chatty driver wouldn't turn back. The nearest vending machine is more than 200 meters away. This is a remote and dilapidated residential area. The residents are basically fishermen. Salomon's target lives here. It was still daytime, and there were not many trees along the streets of the residential area, only some yellow and green grass. It was obvious that the people who lived here did not take care of the grass in leisure. Not only that, but tire rims, empty beer cans and dilapidated RVs piled up between each house with weeds as high as axles. When Salomon got out of the car, he even stepped on a thick bolt that was submerged in the grass, waiting to rust in this desolate sea. When the warm spring breeze blew, a rusty swing in the messy courtyard swayed slightly, making a slight creaking sound, and a little rust-red dust fell down. Salomon didn't see many people here, which made him very satisfied. After he saw the target go out, he sent the driver away. He wanted to make sure that the ensuing battle would not be witnessed. When the Collins family disappeared from the town, the British Collins family quickly took over the fishing industry in the town, as fast as they had prepared for it. After Barnabas was petrified, the police here suddenly realized and began to investigate the accumulated homicide cases. Perhaps it is because there are too many cases, and the public will inevitably consider the investigation to be dereliction of duty. Therefore, the local police did not take measures such as blocking the streets and interrogating the suspects. Instead, they wanted to gradually weaken the impact of these cases and conduct private investigations. But Salomon's killing of vampires and werewolves attracted some attention, so he contacted the taxi driver, and he, a local, would take him through the streets to avoid unnecessary sight. He kicked off the bolts under his feet, calmly following the werewolf not far ahead. This is a typical fisherman, with grey temples and dark skin, wearing a crumpled dark checked shirt. His clothes are as wrinkled as his face. Would habitually walked against the wall, and turned sideways when he came out of the house and went down the stairs. Probably out of professional habits, when he was about to leave the block, Salomon's new face finally made him a little interested. Not to mention that Salomon's clothes are not worn by ordinary people. Anyone with a little discernment can see how expensive the 7 silver chains on Salomon's body are. And Wood was the one with the eyes. As soon as he was discovered, Salomon gave up following and walked up, but before he could speak, the werewolf spoke first. He squinted his red eyes from the perennial sea breeze and looked up and down the young mystic, making a sound from his lungs soaked in smoke tar. What does a young master come here for? There is nothing interesting here, and this is not the place you should come. I want to talk to you. Salomon pointed to a remote corner, come with me. After speaking, he walked over on his own. The werewolf looked left and right, hesitated and followed. Salomon's vintage attire reminded him of wizards in fairy tales. After NG disappeared, he stopped communicating with his former companions, or he would have found out that the town's werewolves were dwindling. Tell me something, boy. When he walked to the back of the house, he became a little impatient. I still have to work, so I don't have time to play house. You can't go, Mr. Wood. After Salomon confirmed that there was no one around, I'm sorry, I can't let any werewolf leave alive. All it takes is one small sip, and the foul saliva will bury the curse of lycanthropy beneath the skin of a normal human. Wait for the full moon, and a new werewolf will appear, and then repeat, and the cycle continues. This is something that cannot be tolerated. You're a wizard? Damn it. I knew that wizards are freaks. He said angrily, listen, I've stopped contacting other werewolves a long time ago, okay? I didn't volunteer to work for NG either. What can I do? I was born a werewolf. So was my dad. So was my grandpa. If I don't work for her, I'll die. And NG has been missing for 31 years, I managed to get away from them. Now, I am an ordinary fisherman. I went fishing to support my family, saved money for my kids to go to school, and I did nothing. I'm sorry, Mr. Wood. No matter what your reasons are, being a werewolf in this world is the original sin. Salomon said expressionlessly, I can't guarantee that you won't bite, and I can't even guarantee that your children won't bite. Will bite. The werewolf panicked, and he spread his hands and said, hey, listen, I haven't bitten anyone, I really haven't. My kids aren't werewolves, I promise. I'd rather sell my soul to the devil than will turn my children into werewolves. Wood, who had worked under Angelique, knew the horror of wizards. The power and cruelty of that which would frighten even werewolves. According to their own parents, Angelique has lived for 200 years, and in those 200 years, she still remained young and strong. Wood felt that the wizard in front of him was the same. He looked young, but he had lived for many years. I'll check it out myself. Salomon said without being shaken by the werewolf's excuse, but you have to die here. I'm not Angelique's kind of wild mage, I'm from Comitage, yours existence violates the laws of the supreme mage. F***ck. F***ck. I didn't do anything, he yelled as he stalked closer to Salomon. Magic needs to be chanted, approaching wizards as quickly as possible, and interrupting their magic is the best way. This was the method his parents conceived when they wanted to rebel against Enchi. Although he disappeared before he could betray Enchi, but now is the time when this method will come in handy. Bang! The muffled sound of flesh and blood colliding suddenly sounded, and the werewolf's head was slapped hard on the grass, then bounced up again, and then was slapped hard again, pushing the grass out of a shallow pit. The sudden blow made him dizzy, almost unconscious, and he was knocked to the ground before he could even transform. Salomon's fierce tiger climbing has already knocked him out of the concussion. Wood only saw that everything in front of him was shaking and becoming blurred. His ears were full of buzzing. Even though he was struggling to breathe, he still connected his hands. Not only that, but I can't lift it up. I will bear all the crimes. Salomon put away his posture, stepped forward, stepped on the werewolf's neck, and pinned the werewolf's jaw with his toes to prevent the werewolf from raising its head and biting his ankle. The mystic leaned over and pressed his palm on the werewolf's temple. He said, "Farewell, Mr. Wood." Woo, cough cough. But the werewolf didn't hear what Salomon was saying at all, and Salomon didn't wait for the werewolf's response. He took out a short dagger from his waist and pointed the sharp blade at Wood. Side of the skull. "Farewell, Mr. Wood," he said again. Immediately afterwards, his other palm hit the end of the dagger heavily, and the sharp blade sank into the werewolf's temple in an instant. Salomon felt the werewolf under his feet twitch a few times, and then stopped moving. He pulled out the dagger, wiped the blade on Wood's clothes, and put it back into the scabbard at his waist. This was the weakest werewolf he had ever hunted. "Aren't you bored sitting like this?" The driver sat back in the car with a bottle of beer and a bottle of Coke. Obviously, he didn't stop at the vending machine. He handed the Coke to Salomon, who was sitting in the co-pilot. "Here, this is ice." Salomon pulled the tab and touched the can with the driver. "Cheers." "Hey, it's so fucking cool." The driver downed half a bottle of beer and asked Salomon, "Where are you going next?" "Whatever, the job is done." Salomon exhaled, and he closed his eyes and leaned back on the seat. Just now, he killed more than one werewolf. How could a werewolf child be an ordinary person? End of this chapter. Chapter 40 The Man's Mouth Deceiving Ghost. The relaxation activities arranged by His Holiness for Salomon are actually an act of strengthening his psychological construction. It's just that Baron Mordo and Casilios are a little dissatisfied, because in their opinion, Salomon's age is too young, and children of this age should not have blood on their hands. I said before Salomon was born that everyone's starting point is different, and he is destined not to be immersed in an ordinary life. Although this is not a good thing, he can only accept it passively. This is the suffering he must go through. The Venerable pushed the tea in front of his two disciples. In Salomon's mind, there is nothing more relaxing than staying in the room and playing games, so I will indulge him to pursue his hobbies. You can guess how long he will stay in the room when he comes back from Colin Town this time? Modu and Casilios looked at each other silently. Originally, hunting vampires and werewolves should be done by them, or by the deacons of the New York Temple, but these responsibilities were placed on Salomon by the Supreme Mage. They applied several times, but were all rejected by His Holiness, which inevitably made them a little worried. Especially when he came back every day, Salomon would always bring a bunch of seafood back to Carmitage, which made Modu feel that Salomon was too foolish and underestimated his opponents. Relax. The Venerable saw what they were thinking. Don't think that Salomon's performance in the body protection class can show his strength, he is letting you. If you let Salomon unlock the Holy Hen will fight you hand to hand, you will not be his opponents. My lord, what exactly are the stigmata? After thinking for a while, Casilios asked the question. I think the stigmata on Salomon's body are completely different from the stigmata in the general sense. A vision at birth, I think. You guessed it right, Casilios. The Venerable said, that's why I appeared there. We must not allow any external dimensional forces to interfere with the earth. But, will Salomon betray mankind? Modu frowned and asked, the same is true for the one in the Bible. I'm worried. No, he won't. Salomon is a real human being, but there are some special ones. The Supreme Mage said, Salomon is an unbeliever's, which is very important, and I am very satisfied that he has this belief. Most people do not have it. They always think that those powerful beings are gods, and that worshipping those extra-dimensional creatures can obtain salvation. This ignorant idea is still recognized by most people today. Including you, Modu, and Casilios. Even after you know that God is also an extra-dimensional creature and stop worshipping him, belief has carved a hole in your heart, and this hole needs to be filled, and this desire will become more urgent. There has never been an omnipotent God in this world. If there is, it must be a lie. Her Majesty's tone gradually became harsher, and she said, besides, we and Emperor Vyson are just a transactional relationship. Emperor Vyson is only our suzerain, and even he is not worthy of worship. The driver took Salomon for a ride in the street. He turned on the radio, beer in hand, and drove crookedly. After a while, he turned his head, looked at Salomon who was looking out the window and asked, brother, are you leaving? Yes, I'm leaving. Salomon looked very relaxed, because he had finished all the things in Colin Town. Any werewolves that could be found have long since been wiped out, though many were implicated. A werewolf's child could not be an ordinary human being, and he didn't believe a word that the werewolf named Wood said, and Salomon couldn't spare any young werewolves who might bite people in the future to survive. The town is not big, and the driver took him around several times, and he drank several cans of beer. The same scenery passed in front of Salomon several times. But Salomon didn't feel impatient, he just liked that kind of boring life. He didn't have any other concerns in this world except Carmitage. The only thing that interested him was its magic. Are you going back to New York? He asked. No, the weather in London is more suitable for me. It's lazy and gentle. Although it often rains, it's not a big problem. Salomon unbuckled his seatbelt and stretched his waist. Let's send it to the front. How do you want to go back? The driver took another sip of his wine. The taxi accelerated suddenly, but slowed down again. Obviously, he had drunk a little too much, and he could no longer tell the difference between refueling and braking. Salomon was not injured, he was still sitting on the seat, motionless. Secret, brother. Salomon stuffed a few banknotes into the driver's breast pocket. You're too drunk, stop. Wait, wait. The driver kept waving after he stopped. Salomon watched curiously as he tore a piece of paper from the drawer, and after hurriedly looking for his mobile phone, he wrote and drew on it. After a while, he handed over a small note with his name and phone number written on it. I know a man in London. It is said that this man is very powerful. You can contact him next time you do this kind of task. Looking at the name on the note, Salomon opened his mouth in surprise. Recently, fires broke out frequently in Colin Town, and most of the corpses were set on fire by Salomon, and only a few werewolves who were followed by Salomon into the wild would be thrown into the sea by him. And Salomon's hunting behavior also made the local police in a hurry. After all, there are still unsolved cases that have accumulated for several years. The media has repeatedly exaggerated the incompetence of the local police, making the atmosphere in the town a little tense. But after all, it didn't affect the life of the residents in the town, it just added a little chatter after dinner. After all, this is the United States, even if you walk on the street, you may be shot. And the only driver who knows the truth. You know, some people like to brag after drinking, and the more they drink, the bigger the bragging. Now, not only the majority of middle-aged and elderly men in the town know that the agents of SHIELD have been to the town, but even the 90-years-old fisherman who is paralyzed in bed is well aware of it. Get a drink even in a wheelchair. In bars these days, everyone can describe the appearance of a SHIELD agent as if they've seen it with their own eyes. There are half-bald white middle-aged men with extremely high hairlines, suits and leather shoes, and kind smiles. There are also black men who are completely bald, blind in one eye, wearing blindfolds and leather jackets. Others say that those who died were actually killed by foreign spies. If you drink a few more glasses of whiskey, the murderer will be upgraded to an alien. In short, how to exaggerate, the quality of the story varies with the price of wine variety. Of course, this group of middle-aged and elderly men also includes the main components of the local police. This made the Colin Town police very confused and angry, and they also had to send a letter to protest the S.H.I.E.L.D's violation of law enforcement. The modus operandi of these homicides is very similar, and it can be speculated that the same person committed the crime. In fact, this kind of serial murder case was actually reported to the FBI. But the Colin Town police did not report the incidents in their jurisdiction to the Federation, let alone the SHIELD. Because in the past 31 years, homicides have occurred in the small town every year, but none of the cases have ever been detected. It is for this reason that the police decided to press down on all the cases if the media find out that these things happened in the past. If such a waste of taxpayers' money is discovered, the mayor's vote will be lost. Do they need more money for the police station? Deception is a common practice all over the world, as long as politicians can learn it without a teacher. No one wants a town full of FBI, tabloid reporters, fake psychics, and half-dead TV stations. There have always been bad things in Maine, and Colin Town is really not too conspicuous. But the protest of the Colin Town police was of no use, because SHIELD was not headed by the Federation, but the World Security Council. After receiving the letter from the Colin Town police, SHIELD was even more confused. They did not send agents to Colin Town that could only show that someone had used their identity falsely. Therefore, an agent who had just finished his mission was sent to Colin Township to investigate the matter. That's right, that's him I saw. A nice guy in a suit with a high hairline. An old man with sunglasses and white hair shouted while leaning on a cane. Father! You are standing up. What? End of this video. Like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more novels like this.